Chapter 710. Finally, he ran to the warehouse next to the office where the hostages were held. He entered the room in a flash, and then carefully but quickly began to remove the cover of the central air conditioning duct on the ceiling. This time, however, he was very careful and didn't make the slightest sound. He crawled into the duct. The space was very narrow and he could only move forward little by little. But it was better this way. As long as he didn't court death, he wouldn't make any sound. Finally, he moved little by little to the top of the office. Looking down through the shutter cover, Qin Guang could already see the people in the room and the small black cubes scattered around the room. They looked like mobile phones from many years ago, but there was no doubt that they were remote-controlled bombs. After adjusting the angle again, Qin Guang saw the two criminals. One of them was holding a remote control which was obviously used to detonate the bomb, and the other just happened to point the gun in his hand at Sun Xiaoxuan in the crowd. Alas, there was no worse situation than this. God knew how powerful these bombs were, but there was no doubt that once they exploded, Sun Xiaoxuan and himself would die without a doubt. But if he chose to deal with the person holding the remote control first, Sun Xiaoxuan would inevitably be shot in the head. Now he had a flying knife in his hand and the heavenly holy grail in his bag. If he threw these two things out like darts, he might be able to kill the two people at the same time, but it might not be able to completely kill them. Whether the person who detonated the bomb pressed the button or the person holding the gun pulled the trigger, Sun Xiaoxuan would still die. Alas, when people are unlucky, they can't even drink water. If the guy holding the gun aimed at someone else, it would be better, but it just had to be Sun Xiaoxuan. What else could he say other than being unlucky? He had no choice but to negotiate with Lioli, who was omnipotent but had no self-awareness. Madam Lioli, you know, the other party doesn't want to talk to you and throws a dear Ming flower at you. Don't make trouble. If I go down like this, I'll really be finished. I don't have any divine power left. You've almost squeezed it dry, okay? Can't you let me have some peace of mind? Besides, it's really difficult. There are two lunatics sitting in this room. I don't have time to hypnotize them at all. Don't make it difficult for me. Lu Li said in a low voice in the Cloud City. You can't just watch him die. It's not that I can't, but I really can't do it. Just then a voice rang out in Qin Guang's head. It was Lu Minghua. Sister Lioli, I have a plan. Roughly 10 odd seconds later, Qin Guang took out the popcorn 5S from his bag and placed it in the sky-piercing holy grail with a doubtful heart. Alright, you don't have to worry about the bomb now, but we can't help you with anything else. Although Qin Guang didn't really understand the principles behind it since Lioli said so, he believed that she wouldn't take her life as a joke. At this time, the two extremists were also looking at the time again. White guy, 30 seconds left. 20 seconds. Hearing the countdown, Brad's face turned pale. Sir, please wait a moment. After all, that's $30 million. Please give my father more time. At this moment, the phone of the extremist with the remote control suddenly rang. He looked down and grinned. Hamid, uncle said the money is here. Very good, little girl. You're very beautiful, but you have to die. It's a pity that your love is like a joke. Hammer, who was holding the gun, turned to look at Sun Xiaoxuan and grinned. Sun Xiaoxuan slowly closed her eyes. She couldn't tell what she was feeling. Was she going to die just like this? Forget it. Although she had many regrets, she would make up for it in her next life. In the end, Qin Guang didn't come. But that was fine too. If he came, he would just die together with her. Just then there was a sudden boom on the office's roof. Qin Guang smashed through the shutters and dashed out from the central air conditioning duct upside down. He had wanted to wait a little longer to see if the guy holding the gun would move the muzzle away temporarily. But now that things had come to this, he couldn't delay any longer. His body was suspended in midair. His right hand gripped the tactical dagger that he had just obtained from Officer Jamie. He flung it fiercely, and the dagger spun in the air as it flew toward Hammer's wrist with lightning speed. From the moment the dagger left his hand to the moment the sharp blade made a circle around Hammer's wrist, only less than 0.2 seconds had passed. Hammer tried to pull the trigger, but no gunshot rang out. His wrist had been sliced off. His wrist that was holding the gun fell to the ground together with the gun. On the other side, half of Qin Guang's body finally fell out. The tip of his foot stepped on the edge of the ventilation duct, and his whole body turned into a shooting star that shot toward Hammer, who was in front of Sun Xiaoxuan. The power of Aeolus kick completely erupted, and the alloy ventilation duct that he had used as a fulcrum caved in fiercely as if it had been stepped on by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Sun Xiaoxuan's eyes snapped open. She turned around to look behind her, and her eyes widened in disbelief. Qin Guang really fell from the sky. Her heart skipped a beat, and her breathing felt as if it was being choked by someone. Countless thoughts flashed through her mind, but they all converged into one sentence. Why did you come? Don't you know that you will die if you do this? On the other side, the other extremist who was holding the remote control in one hand and the submachine gun in the other first cried out in alarm. Then he pressed the button on the remote control without any hesitation, and at the same time his other hand slowly raised the muzzle. Die for me. Qin Guang's body twisted slightly in midair. His right hand formed a fist, and then he swung it back before brazenly swinging it forward, sending a fist smashing toward Hammer from above. Bang! The iron fist smashed heavily into Hammer's chest. This fellow felt as if he had been rammed by a heavy truck traveling at 200 kilometers per hour. He flew backward and his back clearly protruded. The strength of Qin Guang's angry punch was even greater than the 1088 kilograms he had punched on Pierce's tester the day before yesterday. Hammer's internal organs were directly shaken to pieces. Qin Guang used the recoil of this force to support himself on the ground with his right hand, and with a somersault, he landed in front of Sun Xiaoxuan. The extremist in front of him had already thrown away the remote control after pressing the button, and the submachine gun was now aimed at Qin Guang. Sun Xiaoxuan screamed, "Watch out!" But it was too late. The man had already pulled the trigger, and a bullet was rushing toward Qin Guang. There was no way to avoid it. In this split second, Qin Guang's eyes and body's reaction speed increased to the extreme. He put his palms together and clasped them together to catch the bullet flying toward him. The bullet fiercely brushed past his palms, and blood immediately spurted out of his hands. Then the bullet ruthlessly hit his chest, causing his body to tremble. Sun Xiaoxuan screamed again in shock, but Qin Guang didn't fall down. Instead he pounced forward again. The man holding the gun was at a loss. He had clearly hit his chest and he could even see blood spurting out. So what's going on with him? Why is he still alive and kicking? In fact, he didn't stay in a daze for long. It might have been less than 2 seconds, but Qin Guang had already rushed in front of him, and the familiar heavy right fist smashed into his waist and abdomen. A terrible pressure exploded inside his body, and his eyes instantly turned bloodshot. His whole body flew backward, directly smashing through the glass window and flying out of the house. He was still flying in the air when he stopped breathing. The terrible pressure not only shattered his internal organs, but also caused his eyes, ears, nose and mouth to bleed. Qin Guang turned around and grinned at Sun Xiaoxuan. "I'm here. Are you okay?" As he spoke, a dark red blood stain spread out from his chest and soon after, it flowed down. Sun Xiaoxuan's face was pale. His lips and hands trembled as he slowly approached. Seeing the bloodstain on Qin Guang's chest, his tears fell like rain. You were shot." Qin Guang pretended to be fine and shrugged. "I'm fine. It's just a small wound." "You were shot. How could this be a small wound? Why are you so stupid?" Sun Xiaoxuan moved closer and squeezed Qin Guang's shoulders with both hands. More and more tears flowed out of her eyes. "Son, who is he?" Brad first went to check on Hamid and found that the man was completely breathless. Then he leaned over to Hamid. Sun Xiaoxuan didn't want to talk to him. "Son, let's get out of here, shall we?" Seeing that Sun Xiaoxuan was ignoring him, Brad tried to pull her shoulders again. "Get lost. Brad. I don't have time for you. Get away from me." Sun Xiaoxuan had lost her last bit of patience with this guy who didn't know what he was doing. She wasn't as gentle as she usually was. Brad was stunned. He didn't even realize what mistake he had made. On the other side, Qin Guang was already leaning against the wall and slowly falling down. His breath was very weak and his lips were getting paler and paler. His breathing was getting more and more rapid. Sun Xiaoxuan sat down as well. She just wanted to stay by his side. "Brad, let's go. Hurry up and leave. It's not safe here." The other hostages moved closer and pulled on Brad, hinting for him to leave quickly. At this time, the hostages had already opened the office door one after another and were quickly fleeing outside. There were bombs everywhere. Although they didn't know why the bombs didn't explode even though they had clearly pressed the button, it was always good to leave quickly. Qin Guang's breath was getting weaker and weaker. It looked like he would die at any second. "Lioli, you aren't lying to me, right? These bombs really won't explode, right?" At this time, half of Qin Guang's mind was immersed in the world in the cup. He didn't look tired at all. Instead, he was full of energy. "As long as you don't court death and kick those bombs like balls, they won't explode." "Awesome. As expected of Lady Lioli. How did you do it?" Lioli smiled proudly. "The secrets of heaven can't be revealed. Also, you're obviously fine right now. Why are you pretending to be dead?" "I went through so much trouble and even got shot to save him. I should get some benefits back." "Young man, you're very creative. Learn how to cook from me. Forget it, you can have fun on your own. I'm tired. I'm going to rest first. Lioli sat down cross-legged and closed her eyes. She was really exhausted and didn't have time to pay attention to Qin Guang. Just now, Lu Minghua came up with this idea. Didn't he recently receive a new special soul, Nicosia Testbester, in the world of cups? This soul seemed to have an extremely special connection with machine-type objects, especially machines that could explode and could be remotely controlled. It was a natural fit. Just now, Lioli had asked Qin Guang to put his phone under the blanket for this purpose. First, he brought the phone into the domain of the heavenly Holy Grail. Then, he temporarily transformed Nicosia's soul into a mechanical core and inserted it into Qin Guang's phone. Then, he let Qin Guang's phone release a special radio frequency that completely suppressed the extremist's remote control. The extremist's remote control seemed to have pressed the button, but the signal wasn't sent out at all. This was the new function of the heavenly Holy Grail. At this time, Qin Guang was still pretending to be dead outside. His acting skills were on full display. He looked at Sun Xiaoxuan with tears in his eyes. Mr. Class Rep, after I die, you have to take care of yourself. No. Don't. Sun Xiaoxuan cried out. Actually, I'm sick. I need a kiss from Sun Shichan to get up. Chapter 7:11. When he said that, Sun Xiaoxuan cried even harder. She thought that he was trying to make her happy, that he was putting on a brave front, that he felt that he was about to die, and that he didn't want to see her too sad. Sun Xiaoxuan turned over and hugged him tightly. Okay, I'll kiss you. Don't die, I beg you, don't die. Seeing her crying like a pear blossom in the rain, Qin Guang also felt that he might have gone too far. He quickly tried to stand up. Of course he was fine. The power of the submachine gun wasn't that great. The bullet passed through his hands. Although it looked scary and the flesh on his hands was torn to shreds, its power was reduced by a lot. In the end, it was stuck in the strongest chest muscle in history. It was about a centimeter deep, pressed against his ribs and couldn't move an inch. Right now, he was just teasing Sun Xiaoxuan to amuse her. Seeing that she was crying so hard that it hurt his heart, he decided to stop pretending. However, Sun Xiaoxuan was completely fooled by his acting. She slowly moved closer and whispered, Qin Guang, actually, I really like you. Thousands of words couldn't describe Sun Xiaoxuan's feelings at that moment. When Qin Guang really turned into a god and descended from the sky, the softest part of her heart felt as if it had been ruthlessly stabbed. Although she had long imagined that he might come. But when he really appeared, Sun Xiaoxuan suddenly understood that all the mental preparation she had done before was meaningless. Her mind was in chaos, and only the imposing figure of him descending from the sky could be seen. In this world, besides him, there was no other man who would resolutely appear in front of her in this kind of situation. Then, the terrifying demon who pointed a gun at her became vulnerable under his hands. The figure in front of her was so tall, but the other person was aiming a gun at him. Sun Xiaoxuan knew that at that moment Qin Guang could actually dodge. His movements were so fast, but he didn't dodge at all. The reason was very simple, because she was behind him. Sparks flew and bullets flew. His body trembled as he was shot, but he still threw himself forward. Sun Xiaoxuan had asked herself many times what she liked about Qin Guang. The moment she saw Qin Guang block the bullet for her without dodging, her thoughts instantly became clear. Perhaps it was fate, or perhaps she really had a pair of eyes that could see through appearances and see through people's hearts. When she first saw him, she knew that he was a man of indomitable spirit. Although he often acted funny, didn't think before he spoke, and liked to be attracted to beautiful girls, which made Gaoya secretly scolded him as a playboy, it didn't matter. He was him, Qin Guang, a man who would not hesitate to appear in front of her when she was on the brink of death and use his body to block bullets for her. This was countless times more intense than the romance shown in television dramas. I finally experienced something unforgettable with him, but that's not what I thought. Why was he the one who was shot and not me? I wanted to experience more with you, to have more memories, to leave a little more shadow in your heart, but I didn't want to do it in such an intense way, and I didn't want to face such a cruel fate. If you really die, how am I going to live alone? Please stand up and tell me that you weren't shot and that you were lying to me. Hugging Qin Guang tightly, Sun Xiaoxuan's eyes were completely blurred with tears. She simply closed her eyes, but based on the scene in her memory, she slowly and firmly kissed Qin Guang's lips. How she wished that he wasn't joking but was serious. As long as she kissed him, he would really stand up. Please don't die, I'll do whatever you want, and I won't be jealous of those meaningless things anymore. Whether it's Teacher Zhuo Wenwen or Jin Shiriwe, I don't care. You've done so much for me, I shouldn't have been jealous of anyone from the beginning, and I shouldn't have doubted my feelings for you in my heart. Sun Xiaoxuan took a deep breath, and her movements became more resolute. Looking at the cherry-red lips that were getting closer and closer, Qin Guang swallowed his saliva. Reason told him that he should quickly get up and stop acting cute. If he kept acting cute, something bad would happen. He clearly wanted to slowly separate himself from Sun Xiaoxuan during this period of time, but now it seemed like he was sinking deeper and deeper. No, I have to stop her. I have to push her away. It's always like this on TV and in movies. I just saved the damsel in distress, and her mind must be filled with thoughts of repaying me with her body. No, I can't hurt her. But to be honest, Xiaoxuan's mouth really smells good. Where did this faint fragrance come from? How the hell did I end up kissing her? What happened to keeping my distance? I'm poisonous. Also, my hands aren't listening to me at all. I really couldn't tell. Although the esteemed class leader looks quite thin and weak, her chest is really full and elastic. I'm done for. If I pinch her like this, we won't be able to clear our relationship even if I jump into the Yellow River, right? This definitely isn't my fault. I'm being controlled by a mysterious evil force. If he knew earlier that a casual joke would turn out like this, he really wouldn't have deliberately teased Sun Xiaoxuan. But when Sun Xiaoxuan really kissed him and their lips touched, Qin Guang's mind also went blank. His feelings towards Sun Xiaoxuan were actually quite complicated. They were too familiar with each other. They saw each other almost every day during their 3 years in university. From time to time they would fight and quarrel, and he would pull her to teach her a lesson. Or when he accidentally skipped class and was called, he would pull her to help him plead with the teacher. Although Qin Guang always thought that she was very beautiful and had a very special gentle and moving temperament, perhaps it was because he had the dazzling campus belle Wenwen by his side, or perhaps it was because Sun Xiaoxuan was always too low-key, so Qin Guang simply didn't notice this little girl hiding in the crowd and secretly watching him. Qin Guang knew that Sun Xiaoxuan paid a little more attention to him than others, but he only thought that it was because he was more active in class and caused a few troubles. He was a thorn in the class, so Sun Xiaoxuan as the class leader would definitely control him a little more. The relationship between the two could be said to be classmates, but it seemed to be much closer than ordinary classmates. They could be said to be friends, but it seemed that her concern for him exceeded the ordinary meaning of a friend. Qin Guang thought of a song. It was probably the feeling of being above friends but not yet lovers. But since last semester, it seemed that the situation had changed a little. The biggest change was the incident with Pan Jiang. Since then she seemed to have become more and more daring. He just teased her a little bit and thought it was a joke, but it ended up igniting a prairie fire. This can't go on. Forget it, it's not bad to continue like this. The old man isn't a saint, and I can't stop the devil in my heart. Qin Guang continued to lie on the ground silently, but his right hand, which was holding Sun Xiaoxuan, had already unknowingly reached into the gap of her pants. Her skin was so good, smooth and soft like boiled egg white. Qin Guang's left hand was delightfully groping her chest through her clothes. To be honest, today's situation was special. Otherwise, with Sun Xiaoxuan's thick skin, he wouldn't have been able to take advantage of her like this. This devil is too scary. He has completely controlled me. After a long time, Sun Xiaoxuan finally retreated to the side with a red face. Footsteps gradually came from the door, and the police and FBI of Neil finally arrived. Qin Guang also felt that his acting was enough. Mr. Class Leader, please move aside and let me sit up first. Sun Xiaoxuan shook her head desperately. No, don't move, you can still be saved. What? I was just teasing you, I'm really fine. Sun Xiaoxuan still didn't believe him. Don't lie to me, I know everything. After you die, I won't marry for the rest of my life. Why are you so stupid? I don't want you to save me like this. Qin Guang was speechless. Fine, his acting was so good that no one would believe him now that he was telling the truth. Qin Guang simply lay on the ground and raised his hand to touch the place where the bullet was embedded. Then he gritted his teeth and pulled out the bullet, throwing it to the side. See, I told you I'm fine, the bullet really didn't go in. Qin Guang turned and grinned at Sun Xiaoxuan. Sun Xiaoxuan's eyes widened, thinking that he was hallucinating. That wasn't the end. Qin Guang simply hugged her waist and stood up. I was really just joking with you. Or am I? You want to kill me with that stupid gun? Sun Xiaoxuan still couldn't believe it, but the feeling of being hugged by Qin Guang was so real. She tried to struggle a little, wanting to get down, but it was useless. Qin Guang had her firmly in his grip. You two, are you all right? Officer Jamie stood at the door of the office, carefully poking his head in, looking at the bombs hanging everywhere in the office. The two of them were actually being lovey-dovey as if no one else was around. This Wuxia CIA director really knew how to have fun. Qin Guang raised an eyebrow at Jamie. Yo bro, your knife is pretty good. It's on the ground, clean it up yourself, see you later. Qin Guang didn't put Sun Xiaoxuan down. Her body was so limp that it looked like she couldn't even stand straight. When they got downstairs, Qin Guang didn't want to be the center of attention. Instead, he used his identity as the director of the Wuxia Special Affairs Bureau to request for diplomatic protection, and quietly left with Sun Xiaoxuan. Today he had defeated 2 extremists, and if it was publicized he would become the public enemy in the eyes of the extremists in the cult. That would be fun. Sun Xiaoxuan was still in a daze until she and Qin Guang got into the off-road vehicle. Ew. How did you do it? Qin Guang started the car, accidentally touching the wound on his hand, and it hurt a lot. Here's what happened, Mr. Class Representative. You've seen The Matrix, right? When the bullet flew out, at the moment of life and death, I awakened a special ability, and it felt like time had slowed down. With a swoosh, I put my hands together, and the bullet flew towards me, hitting the gap between my hands and burrowing forward. I pressed my hands together with all my might, trying to block the bullet, but I wasn't strong enough, and the bullet flew out and hit my chest. As Qin Guang spoke, he flexed his chest muscles. I've been working out recently and my chest muscles are especially developed. When the bullet hit my chest muscles, it burrowed in again, but it didn't matter. I used the Sea Dragon Coiling Dragon and squeezed my chest muscles to the center, and the bullet was caught. Sun Xiaoxuan's eyes widened, thinking that this guy was telling a fantasy story, but looking at him, it seemed to be real. Seeing that she still didn't believe him, Qin Guang picked up his clothes and pointed to his chest. See, it's really fine. Wait, don't move, let me take a look. Sun Xiaoxuan moved closer, one hand touching the uninjured part of Qin Guang's chest, and her eyes desperately moved closer to the wound that was shot by the gun. Although it looked scary, it really seemed to be a relatively serious skin injury. Sun Xiaoxuan didn't notice that the finger she pressed on Qin Guang's body accidentally touched a small bean, making Qin Guang grimace in pain. It's really, really fine. After a long time, Sun Xiaoxuan reluctantly sat up straight. Of course, don't you think about who I am? Sun Xiaoxuan said again, but you still have to deal with the wounds on your hands and chest, or else it will get infected. Okay, I'll go to the hospital now. As Qin Guang spoke, he started the car, accidentally touching the wound on his palm again, and the pain made him grimace again. God bless, his muscles and bones didn't suffer any damage. After driving for a while, he realized that the road out of town was completely rotten, and he couldn't drive out. Just as Qin Guang was about to call for help, Frant arrived in a helicopter. Although this young man didn't have the courage to risk his life with Qin Guang, he still had a sense of responsibility. The guilt-ridden Frant told Qin Guang to never mention the car compensation again, and he hurriedly had the helicopter take Qin Guang to the largest private hospital in Detroit. He had already contacted the famous doctor that the Shack family had been working with for a long time, and he was already waiting in the hospital. Qin Guang looked like he had been shot, and his injuries looked terrible, but in fact they were just some external wounds that needed to be bandaged. He had originally planned to take Sun Xiaoxuan to a hotel, but Sun Xiaoxuan didn't feel at ease and insisted that Qin Guang stay in the hospital. Old Master Guang was very disappointed. Why was it the hospital again? This place wasn't suitable for the old man to do something shameful. Kill him. Since he had already become a regular at the hospital, he might as well open his own private hospital? Alright, the investment was quite high, and it wasn't easy to find good doctors. If he accidentally recruited a bunch of quacks, wouldn't he just eat away his savings? I'm not even from Putian. A sister Tanging? Forget it. Her family didn't lack money, and she was a straight-A student in the medical world. She seemed to have said that her dream in life was to win the Nobel Prize in medicine. Why would she waste time at her own private hospital? Sigh, what a headache. Don't pout. This is a gunshot wound and it's very deep. We need to observe it more. What if you get tetanus? Rest well in the hospital for 2 days. I'll stay here with you. I won't go anywhere. Qin Guang hurriedly shook his head. No, I have a piano performance the day after tomorrow. I have to return to China tomorrow. What? Look at your hands. You can still play the piano? Sun Xiaoxuan suddenly asked a very serious question. Qin Guang raised his hands and looked at his wrapped palms. He was speechless. Damn, did I forget about this? Although the bones weren't injured, the bullet had penetrated the center of his palms, and the flesh was torn quite badly. It seemed like he would really have a problem if he played the piano in this state. He could barely play the piano like this, but if he wanted to fully perform at the piano performance and convince the audience in front of the TV, his hands had to be in good condition. This was troublesome. What should he do to make his hands recover as soon as possible? Chen Guang couldn't help but think of the last time he was shot in the shoulder. However, he was lucky at that time and happened to be in the world of the Qilin arm. After he came out, the injury healed automatically with the help of the divine power of the heavenly Holy Grail. But he couldn't do it this time. He had just had fun with the eeless legs, and it had only been a day since he had customized his pectoral muscles. Although the Holy Grail was powerful, he didn't have any extra food. He couldn't even get the beggar version of the world in the cup. What should he do? Chapter 7:12. I still have 2 more sets of medicine for Wunwen. Should I take a bath and try it out? Class rep, can you help me look through the bag next to me? Yes, that's the bag. There are 2 sets of traditional Chinese medicine inside. Help me boil 1 set and pour it into the bathtub. You've just been injured and your wounds haven't even healed yet. Why are you taking a bath? I can't explain it to you clearly, but this is really important. I won't joke around with my body. Please help me, Mr. Class Representative, thank you. Although she didn't understand what Chen Guang was trying to do, Sun Xiaoxuan was too easily persuaded. She couldn't dissuade him, and in the end she agreed to his seemingly unreasonable request. That was the good thing about having someone by her side to take care of her. Although Sun Xiaoxuan wasn't as skilled as Wu Miaoan when it came to brewing medicine, she was meticulous. Chen Guang guided her throughout the process of brewing the medicine. After half an hour, a steaming hot bath was ready. Unwilling to give up, Chen Guang got up from the bed with a cup in hand and walked to the bathroom. The hospital arranged by Fronte was really good. Staying in it wasn't much different from staying in a hotel. Unexpectedly, when he stripped down to his underwear and laid in the bathtub, Sun Xiaoxuan suddenly opened the bathroom door and stuck her head in. I'll help you scrub your back? Chen Guang hurriedly waved his hand. No. I'm not scrubbing my back. I'm soaking in a medicinal bath. This medicine is very special and has a miraculous healing effect. You should rest first. I don't know how long I'll have to lie down. Sun Xiaoxuan reluctantly retreated. In fact, she wanted to do something more tonight, but she quickly relaxed. Chen Guang was still injured, and the 2 of them still had a long time to spend together. There were still many opportunities, so there seemed to be no need to rush today. That medicine must have been given to him by Wunwen. Otherwise, anyone with a normal brain would know not to take a bath after suffering from external injuries. There was no way Chen Guang didn't know that. What's so good about it? Don't let Chen Guang's wound get infected. Chen Guang was lying in the bathtub with the medicinal liquid covering his entire body. There was an itchy feeling coming from the wounds on his hands and chest. Wunwen's medicine had some effect, but it wasn't very good. It seemed that the effect on this kind of external injury wasn't as good as expected. Healing a wound and treating a strain were ultimately different. Chen Guang tried to enter the heavenly Holy Grail again. He had no choice but to ask Colored Glaze for help. Standing in front of Lu Li, who was sitting cross-legged in meditation, Chen Guang cautiously called out, Lord Lu Li? What are you doing? She seemed to have been tormented enough today, so she had to correct her attitude. I say, save your energy. She won't wake up. At this moment, Lu Minghua's voice came from outside the walls of Cloud City. Chen Guang was greatly shocked, and sorrow instantly welled up in his heart. Could it be that I've overly squeezed Lord Lu Li's divine power out and caused her to fall into a deep sleep once more? Does she need 1,000 years of meditation before she can recover her consciousness? I don't want it. It's not that serious. She'll be fine in a few days. However, Sister Lu Li won't be able to help you for the next 2 days. Tell me if there's anything you need. I'm very reliable. Lu Minghua guided him patiently. After coming to the heavenly Holy Grail, he had waited bitterly for so many days. Finally, Sister Lu Li had fallen into a short period of deep sleep. This was a golden opportunity. Chen Guang actually didn't know much about this uninvited guest Lu Minghua. Alright, he actually didn't know much about Lu Li either. The only thing he knew was that this Lu Minghua should also be one of them, and Lu Li should trust her a lot. These 2 gods were at least allies. Flying out of Cloud City, Chen Guang stood in front of Lu Minghua. I'm a little troubled. Look at the injuries on my body. I have very important matters to attend to in a few days. An injury on my hand isn't good for my performance. Blood? What did you say? No, nothing. Lu Minghua changed the topic. Let me summarize your needs. You just want to recover as soon as possible, right? Chen Guang nodded. Yes. Last time I was shot in the shoulder, and it was through the test of the world in the cup that I quickly recovered. This time it seems that I can't get the world in the cup in a short time. Lu Minghua, do you have any good ideas? Lu Minghua shook her flower bud slightly. It's not that there isn't a way, but I don't know if you have the guts to try it. Don't say it in such a creepy way. I'm timid. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Based on his many years of reading online novels, Qin Guang knew from Lu Minghua's words that she was definitely planning to make a dirty devil's deal with him. He'd better forget about such a terrible thing. Stop. Seeing that Qin Guang was about to run, the deer cry flower finally revealed her fox's tail. Vines instantly grew out from her roots. Before Qin Guang's soul could turn ethereal, she had already locked him down. The deer cry flower's godly energy was released from the vines, which coiled around Qin Guang's body, locking him down and rendering him powerless. His whole body was lifted into the air. Qin Guang shouted, "I have no grudges with you in the past. Don't make trouble." Lu Minghua laughed. "Don't be like this. I don't want too much from you. It's just a little blood. Why the hell do you all like my blood?" Qin Guang remembered the first time he came into contact with Liuli a long time ago. It seemed that his finger was also injured. Then he gave his blood to the Tongtian Holy Grail to truly activate this cup. "Because your blood is very nutritious. Don't be nervous. You'll be fine like this. I only need 200 cc of blood. You can donate the same amount of blood every time. It'll grow back in a few days." "When did you even learn the units of measurement? You've been planning this for a long time." "Of course." As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Minghua's vines wrapped around Qin Guang from all directions and started to lick the wounds on his palm and chest. That's right. She gave Qin Guang the feeling that someone was licking him with a tongue. "If you want to collect blood, then do it properly. Can you not make it so wretched? We're not tentacle animations. Don't make it too big. F***CKU. Do you think I want to? You only have these 3 wounds on your body, alright?" But since he was on the tree, he had no choice but to lower his head. In the end, Qin Guang could only grit his teeth and accept the shameful process. Licking away 200 cc of his blood was probably something that had never been done before. Fortunately, Lu Minghua didn't spout nonsense. She really wanted that much. Once the amount was enough, Qin Guang was put down. "Wait a moment. I'll give you a surprise later. Actually, this should have been done a long time ago. But I was unlucky. I only sucked your hair. If I could suck a little more flesh and blood, I wouldn't have to wait until today." As Lu Minghua spoke, her body began to change again. Qin Guang rolled his eyes. He thought to himself, "I can give you my blood but not my flesh. If I accidentally let you eat something that you shouldn't eat, causing me to be abruptly shortened by a section, who can I go to reason with?" The tall Lu Minghua began to tremble crazily. The lustrous feather robe that was absorbed into her body turned into a myriad of colorful brilliance that appeared on the branches. Her body made a creaking sound and began to grow up crazily again. Out of thin air, she sprang up another few feet. The brilliance on the huge flower bud was even brighter. It was like a scorching sun in the sky. It was so bright that Qin Guang couldn't open his eyes. Under the dumbfounded gaze of Qin Guang, the dazzling flower bud exploded with a bang. It turned into specks of stars and scattered in Cloud City. Before Qin Guang could exclaim, a tiny spot of light appeared in the place where the flower bud originally grew. Scarlet lines gradually appeared from the bottom to the top of the flower stem, resembling a mysterious divine rune. Qin Guang speculated that these scarlet lines should be the blood that was sucked away just now. Sure enough, as the scarlet lines gradually formed, these lines that were filled with red mist began to climb up like small snakes. Finally, they converged on the small dot that grew on the original flower bud. A fruit gradually emerged and grew at a speed visible to the naked eye. It eventually became a green fruit about 5 feet tall, hanging at the top of the stem. At this time, the Lu Minghua had no flowers. Perhaps it should be renamed to Lu Minghua fruit. The light gradually dimmed and dissipated. Cloud City returned to peace. The sound of Lu Minghua came from the fruit. It sounded slightly tired. "Cool." Well, actually, she wasn't particularly tired. Is it done?" Qin Guang asked tentatively. Lu Minghua nodded. "Yes, it's done for now." "You mean you made such a big move, but in the end you just replaced the flower with a fruit?" Qin Guang shrugged. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. What do you know? Now you..." Lu Minghua seemed to be a little shy halfway through her words. However, she felt that she had forcefully sucked his blood today. If she didn't give him some real benefits, she would feel guilty. Moreover, she had returned the favor so that she could continue to reap benefits from him in the future. Forget it, if she was embarrassed, then so be it. Taking advantage of the fact that she hadn't successfully transformed the entire flower body, it didn't seem that hard to say. "What am I going to do now?" What surprise are you going to give me? Come in front of me and use your hand to touch my stem. Remember not to use too much force. It's best if you can find a special frequency. Later you can secrete a drop of deer oil from the bottom of my stem. It can increase your body's metabolism in a short period of time and help you recover from your injuries. This is this God Emperor's trump card. Even Sister Luli doesn't know about it. If you take it to the God realm, it can even heal the God Emperor's injuries. Your small injury is not worth mentioning. Chen Guang silently looked at the big green fruit floating in the sky. He muttered in his heart. What the hell is this deer oil? Why does this process sound so shameful? What are you still dawdling for? Don't think that deer oil is easy to get. I only have one drop because I just bore a god fruit. You won't get another chance like this. All right. Chen Guang slowly walked forward and stretched out his hands. A little higher, a little higher. A little to the right. Yes, this depression. Under the guidance of the deer fruit, Chen Guang found the right position and used his hands to touch it. It was her cry that was very shameful. Can you be a little more serious? Deer fruit? What nonsense. Do you still want deer oil? What kind of damn technique is this? It's amazing. 3 shallow and 1 deep. Thank you for your patronage. Hiss. My God. What kind of technique is this? 9 shallow and 1 deep. Hold back your words and feel with your heart. Never in his wildest dreams did Chen Guang expect that the first time he used this divine technique that he learned from a book would be against a flower. How sad. Forget it. I don't know what kind of life this flower has in the God realm. Such a shameful thing, such a despicable secretion, it actually has the face to call itself deer oil. Do you really think I'm a 3-year-old child? You're already crying out like this, how can I not know what it is? Finally, the deer fruit stem began to tremble crazily. Her voice became more and more like that. It's coming. It's coming. 1 drop, catch it. Only 1 drop. Stand there and don't move. Chen Guang clenched his teeth and opened his arms. Although he felt uncomfortable, he endured it in order to heal his injuries as soon as possible. In the next moment, a crack suddenly appeared at the bottom of the deer fruit stem. If he remembered correctly, this crack seemed familiar. He seemed to have once plunged his head into it. As he was thinking in a daze, a viscous but fragrant golden liquid rushed out from inside. It enveloped his entire body and pushed him back a few meters. What happened to 1 drop? You're practically a fountain. Chen Guang sat up straight and wiped his face. The posture he used to receive the deer oil was too sincere. His mouth was slightly open and a lot of it was poured in. He couldn't even spit it out. Thinking about the true origin of this thing, he felt a little uncomfortable. Don't mind the details. This is just 1 drop for my body. I'm a little tired. I need to sleep. You can go out and feel it yourself. It's really strange. It's just secreting deer oil. Why is it so tiring? As he spoke, there was no sound from the deer fruit. It seemed like it had really fallen asleep. Chen Guang looked at this giant flower. To be honest, this drop of yours is really big. Also, don't pretend to be pure. I don't believe that you don't know anything. As he was complaining, the deer oil that had spread out on the floor of Cloud City suddenly came to life. It gathered around his body and tightly wrapped him like jelly. Waves of coldness assaulted him. Chen Guang watched as this unknown liquid quickly melted into his body. He was stunned. I'm not a sponge. Why is my suction so strong? He waited for a while, but there weren't any movements from the 2 of them. From the looks of it, they were done, so Chen Guang retreated. In that instant when he opened his eyes, he shrieked in pain. The wounds on his hands and chest felt like they were being burned by flames. Sun Xiaoxuan, who was originally waiting outside, suddenly opened the bathroom door. This time she had a good reason. Chen Guang, what's wrong? She didn't give Chen Guang a chance to explain. She threw herself at the side of the bathtub. Then she saw the most incredible scene in her life. This guy was actually wearing underwear when taking a bath. What a lunatic. Angry. Infuriating. Chen Guang was in so much pain that his head was covered in cold sweat. He finally understood the power of Deercry's accelerated metabolism. It was really terrible. It was simply forcing his wounds to heal at a speed that was hundreds or thousands of times faster than normal. This was fast recovery, but the process was really heart-wrenching. He didn't have the time to care about Sun Xiaoxuan, who had suddenly barged in. He could only grit his teeth and endure. On the other side, Sun Xiaoxuan couldn't take advantage of him. She slowly moved her gaze up and finally saw the scene in front of her clearly. The place on Chen Guang's chest that had been torn open by the bullet was rolling like a wave. Pieces of fresh flesh rapidly grew out, mending the wound that had been torn open by the bullet. Sun Xiaoxuan looked at Qin Guang's hands. They were in the same situation. After a long time, she watched helplessly as all the wounds on Qin Guang's body automatically closed up like a zipper. They quickly and completely healed until there were no traces left. She finally covered her mouth and exclaimed, "Mad, mad, he's gone mad." Her mind was filled with despair and disappointment. Without a doubt, this medicine was given to him by Wenwen. Was Wenwen really so scary? This medicine simply had the power of a supernatural being. Chapter 7:13. While Sun Xiaoxuan was in a daze, Qin Guang's wounds finally healed completely. His forehead was full of sweat, and the medicine in the bathtub had been sucked clean by him. The super metabolic ability of Shenlu oil combined with the special medicine of the Wen family was obvious to anyone who used it. Anyway, he didn't want to do it again after the first time. Wiping the sweat on his head with the water in the bathtub, Qin Guang tremblingly stretched out his hand. "Help, help me up." At this moment, Sun Xiaoxuan recovered from his shock and held onto Qin Guang's hand. He was angered by Qin Guang, who wore underwear even when taking a bath, and was shocked by Qin Guang's monstrous healing ability. Sun Xiaoxuan slowly helped Qin Guang up. Qin Guang sat up and sat on the edge of the bathtub for a long time. The pain in his chest and hands finally disappeared completely. He stood up and stretched, announcing that he was fully recovered. Although the process was a bit of a scam, the result was gratifying. She looked at him quietly. At this time, the water drops on his body had gradually dried up. The annoying black underwear didn't become translucent after being wet. She could only see the bulging thing, but it wasn't real. Sun Xiaoxuan's mood was very complicated. She felt regret and inconceivable. Her mind was still thinking about the terrifying healing scene. After waiting for so long, she began to reflect on another problem. The phenomenon on Qin Guang's body was unlikely to be the effect of Wenwen's medicine. Wenwen was a human, not a god. No matter how powerful the medicine was, it couldn't be so powerful. Therefore, the problem was most likely on Qin Guang. What kind of secret was hidden in this guy's body? 10 million questions finally converged into one sentence. "Do you still want to take a bath?" No, I just want to lie down." "Right, have you packed your things?" "I bought a ticket to the same flight as you. We'll go back together tomorrow." "Must you go back?" Sun Xiaoxuan was still reluctant. Qin Guang nodded and smiled at her. "Of course. Just renting the National Gallery of Art cost a few million. If I don't go back, wouldn't the money be wasted? Also, so many people have already bought tickets, I can't just let them go. This pigeon is too big, I can't let it go." "Sai, you're really?" Sun Xiaoxuan gradually became melancholy. She felt that Qin Guang's position was getting higher and higher, and she was getting more and more confused about his situation. Could it be that he and I are really not from the same world? "Well, why don't you go outside first? My underwear is wet. I need to change my pants." Seeing that Sun Xiaoxuan was distracted, Qin Guang reminded her that she felt a little cold after sitting outside for a long time. Okay. If Wu Tong was in Qin Guang's shoes, she might even force Qin Guang to change into his underwear. However, Sun Xiaoxuan's skin was thin. Although he had such thoughts in his heart, he didn't dare to say it out loud. Thus, he reluctantly retreated and did not forget to instruct, don't hesitate if you need any help. Today's class monitor's son is not normal." Qin Guang concluded. "Fortunately, I'm not normal today or I'll eat you up." After drying his body and changing his underwear, Qin Guang lay back on the hospital bed. Sun Xiaoxuan lay on the bed opposite to him. Her eyes were blank and no one knew what she was thinking. Seeing her restless look, Qin Guang knew that she was still thinking about the scene she just saw. In fact, not to mention her, even Qin Guang was shocked. Who knew that the effect of the deer oil was so overbearing, and she happened to see it. "Qin Guang, I ask you a question. Can you answer me truthfully?" Finally, Sun Xiaoxuan spoke. "Sure, go ahead and ask away." Qin Guang acknowledged, "What will come will come." "Do you like me?" Qin Guang was stunned. He thought that Sun Xiaoxuan would ask about his wound. He was even ready to lie to her and say that he was an alien or talk about the metaphysics of immortals, just like when he tricked Tang Ying. However, he didn't expect that she would ask this. Qin Guang turned his head and looked at Sun Xiaoxuan. She was also looking straight at him. Her face was flushed, but her eyes were bright. She didn't avoid his gaze at all, but with a very special determination. "I think I like you a little." Qin Guang's words were not firm, but it was indeed his true feelings. It was impossible for him to say that he didn't like her. He couldn't lie to himself, nor could he lie to Sun Xiaoxuan. But for him to say resolutely that he liked her and that he wanted to be with her, He couldn't do it. So, after thinking about it, he simply used such an ambiguous tone. Perhaps it was a little hurtful, but it couldn't be any more sincere. Okay. Sun Xiaoxuan suddenly smiled, and it was a very sweet smile. Even though there was a hint of uncertainty in Qin Guang's tone, she knew that this was his character. Good, this was the real him. By the way, will you still study next semester? You're so busy now. Sun Xiaoxuan asked again. Qin Guang said resolutely this time, I will study, why not? What can I do if I don't study? Don't think that I am full of enthusiasm for other things. Let me tell you, I am forced to do so. Who wants to live such a hard and busy life? It's okay. You will settle down sooner or later. Sun Xiaoxuan said that she had seen through the world again, and then looked straight at Qin Guang. Go to sleep. I will go back to school with you to pack your things tomorrow morning. You were scared today, weren't you? Qin Guang was scared by her stare. He was afraid that she would pounce on him at this time, so he changed the topic. Sun Xiaoxuan nodded first and then shook her head. I was scared at first, and then I was even more scared. But when you stood up with me in your arms, I was sure that you were really okay. Then, I was not afraid of anything. Mr. Class Rep. Okay, I won't say these mushy words. Sigh, why am I so unlucky? I'm not pretty, I'm not talented, I can't sing, I'm not a star, and I'm not the campus belle. Don't say that. It's not your problem. You are very excellent. I'm not used to you suddenly becoming like this. Qin Guang was not talking nonsense. Talking to Sun Xiaoxuan in this state was really stressful. It was much more difficult than talking to her at school. He was afraid that he would accidentally say or do something wrong and hurt her. I know, but don't think of me as so fragile. I'm not that easily sad. Because I have a heart that is more determined than many others. It is a heart that simply likes you. Another confession. Previously in the office of the Detroit Institute of Technology, when she thought she was really going to die, she said that she liked you once. Now she said it again. I'm so hesitant. Should I try to say yes and then hug her to sleep? Sleep. I don't want to talk to you anymore. You flirtatious radish. However, Sun Xiaoxuan immediately poured cold water on him and ridiculed him. Before he could think clearly, she immediately covered his head with the quilt. After a while, she actually fell asleep. The quilt slowly slid down and a slight snoring sound came from her nose. She looked a little playful. She was really tired. However, Qin Guang could not fall asleep. He turned on the TV and turned it to silent. It happened to be playing the highlights of today's international arm wrestling competition. He watched his journey of winning the championship on TV. It was a very unique feeling. Presumably, there were many television stations in the world that were also showing the video of this competition. At this time, his domestic hype should be in full swing. He was the first Asian person in history to win the international arm wrestling competition. Moreover, he was a relatively thin person. He had snatched food from a group of monstrous giants. This would definitely attract people's attention. He wondered how the people who were about to go to the National Art Museum to hear his piano concert would feel when they suddenly found out that he had gone abroad to win the title of the world's strongest arm wrestling king. Thinking about it, it would still be quite strange, right? But it did not matter. Anyway, he had never taken the normal path. Qin Guang could even feel that as the TV program was broadcasted, fresh and hot threads of faith were flying in from all over the world. From the end of the competition until now, the world of Kirin's arms faith production was still increasing. Although it was not full yet, it should be in less than 2 days. Aside from that, Qin Guang did not notice that his pencil-sharpening world had already reached the maximum. It must be because the Guinness conference in China had been broadcasted, and the viewership was pretty good. It was a pity that this program would be ending soon. He also felt that the new program of China's 5,000 years of stunts was not bad. Why did they have to go to the Guinness conference that worshipped foreigners? We can do our own. Before he finished watching the TV, his phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was Lin Jingwei. At this moment, Qin Guang had no choice but to mention the Popcorn 5S, an extremely powerful domestic popular model. After being stuffed into the heavenly holy grail by Qin Guang, it clanked along with his bag when he moved violently. Aside from the small problem of a cracked screen, it was actually still usable. As expected of a company with a conscience. Xiao Wang is awesome. I will definitely accept your endorsement next time. What? Brother Guang, bad news. I heard that class rep's son is doing an experiment in America. Something happened at that school. It seems that the class rep was among the hostages. Little Linny's voice sounded very anxious. He didn't know who had told him this news. Qin Guang looked at Sun Xiaoxuan, who was drowsy from the ringing of his phone. He whispered, "All right, don't say things after the fact. I'm here. No, it's really serious. I heard that a few hostages died. Qingguang, who was that? Sun Xiaoxuan said in a daze. He did not know if he was really woken up. What? It should be 1 o'clock in the evening over there, right? Class rep's voice? Oh my god. Brother Guang, I was wrong. Enjoy your meal, goodbye. The tactful Linny hung up the phone again. Given his character, he probably wouldn't go to Jin Shiriyue to complain, right? Chapter 7:14. After hanging up the phone, Qingguang was also a bit sleepy and fell asleep in a daze. In the middle of the night, the room seemed to be a bit cold. A warm and petite body quietly burrowed into his bed. The sleepy Qingguang didn't think too much about it. He just thought it was a dream. He hugged the body tightly and continued to sleep. Even in the middle of the night, he couldn't remember what he was dreaming about. Perhaps it was because Zhuo Jingxi wasn't by his side, Wenwen wasn't there, and he didn't go to the Sea of Fleeting Time to see Annie. Today he was stimulated by the divine deer oil, so there were some charming thoughts lingering in his mind. Deep in sleep, the chaotic and complicated thoughts in his mind unconsciously emerged from the depths of his subconscious. Adding to the fact that there was such a petite person in his arms that he could do whatever he wanted, it was even more incredible. His hands moved as he dreamed. His hands randomly groped the body of the person in his arms, and his body forcefully moved forward. In a dream, people naturally didn't have so many scruples, and the stimulation they received was also doubled. There was a saying, a night of spring wind without a trace, like a dream, like an illusion, but also like reality. Sun Xiaoxuan blushed. She didn't think it would be like this. Previously, she had woken up in the middle of the night. She looked up at Qingguang sleeping soundly in the dim light outside. Her mind then recalled what happened in the Detroit Institute of Technology in the evening. The scene of the dead person gradually emerged from the bottom of her heart. She only felt waves of lingering fear. At that time she appeared calm enough. Afterwards, because of Qingguang's injuries, she temporarily forgot about other fears. It was not until the middle of the night that she recalled the scene in the depths of her mind. The more she thought about it, the more scared she became. The scene of the shot girl lying in a pool of blood didn't fade with time. Instead, it became clearer and clearer in the darkness of the night. The color of the blood spread on the ground became brighter and brighter. It was like a dark red abyss that seemed to want to swallow one's reason. Sun Xiaoxuan suddenly felt very cold, so cold that it pierced into her bones. No matter how strong she was still just an ordinary female university student. She hadn't experienced too many things. It was already a miracle that she could hold on until now. His bed must be very warm, right? Sun Xiaoxuan asked himself again and again in his mind. Qingguang and his bed had become a black hole, crazily attracting Sun Xiaoxuan's mind. She finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She crawled out of her bed and tiptoed to Qingguang's bedside. She pulled back the blanket and curled up her body. It was really warm. Qingguang's body temperature turned the bed into the warmest place in the world. Especially after a while, when Qingguang pulled her into his arms in a daze, the dark red image that kept surfacing in Sun Xiaoxuan's mind gradually shattered. In the beginning everything was fine. However, after lying down for a while, Qingguang began to behave. At first, Sun Xiaoxuan was still holding it in. She knew that Qingguang had already fallen asleep. She only thought that this guy was treating her as a stuffed toy. However, as time went on, Qingguang's hands became more and more dishonest. She gradually couldn't hold it anymore. This guy, what kind of dirty dream is he having? It hurts. The bones in my butt hurt. How can this guy be so hard? Sun Xiaoxuan struggled to move up a little bit. Finally, she was able to relax a little. Qingguang was completely unaware. He really thought that he was dreaming. After a long time, he finally let out a long sigh. His whole body was incomparably comfortable. In his 20 years of life, he had never had such a realistic dream after winter. Should I use a tissue to wipe it? In a daze, this thought popped up in his mind. However, he gave up on it. His whole body was lazy. He didn't have the slightest bit of strength. He was too lazy to move. In any case, he would die by tomorrow morning and turn into a shell. According to the law of conservation of energy, Qingguang's metabolism today consumed a lot of energy. It was also because his mind was more tenacious than ordinary people. If it was an ordinary person, they would have already fainted. Qingguang was calm enough, but Sun Xiaoxuan was suffering. The two of them obviously didn't do anything, but they were sticky. It was really uncomfortable. She was panting with a red face. After spending a lot of effort, she finally cleaned up with great difficulty. She didn't dare to move too much, for fear that she would wake up Qingguang. When she lay down again, her mind began to worry about another thing. She heard that tadpoles can live for 4 hours and they can even swim inside. Just now there seemed to be quite a bit of tadpole sticking to the base of my thigh. Did I directly swim inside? I can't be pregnant, right? This is such a loss. But I shouldn't be so unlucky, right? Isn't this probability similar to winning 5 million yuan in the lottery? But what if... Sun Xiaoxuan, what are you thinking about all day long? Can't you think of something good? How can I get pregnant out of nowhere? I just rubbed against it. Forget it, why don't I buy a pill tomorrow? It can be used for 72 hours. But the pill seems to have side effects. For the whole night, she was worried about the gains and losses, but she was also faintly looking forward to something. The next morning, before Qin Guang woke up, she shrunk her neck and went back to her bed. The fear of being held hostage was gone, and she was only afraid of something else. Damn. You have dark circles under your eyes. Did you steal a cow last night? Early in the morning, Qin Guang was shocked by Sun Xiaoxuan's dark eyes. Sun Xiaoxuan had a guilty conscience. You stole a cow. Didn't steal a cow? The one who stole it? I'm angry. Sun Xiaoxuan stamped his feet. Okay, I won't joke with you. I'm sorry. I'll borrow a car from my friend and then we'll go to your school to move things. We should go back to China. Qin Guang knew that she was shy and he knew that he had made a joke. He shouldn't joke about a girl having an affair. Unexpectedly, when the two went downstairs, they found that a black armored MPV was already waiting downstairs. Several UA agents with loaded guns were on full alert, and even Frant was blocked on the periphery, unable to enter. What's going on? Qin Guang scratched his head in confusion. Sun Xiaoxuan also pulled Qin Guang's clothes nervously. Hello, Director Qin. My name is Snow, an agent of the CIA. I'm also responsible for security when some foreign dignitaries visit. This time, Director Qin was injured because of our negligence and we're deeply sorry. Qin Guang suddenly realized that he must have used his identity as the director of the Special Affairs Bureau yesterday to show off and cause an international reaction. Sure enough, this was a diplomatic incident. A deputy minister of Wuxia was in danger in his own country, which made the U.S. personnel uneasy. They mobilized manpower and material resources overnight to increase the level of security, at least to the level of a visit from a deputy minister of Wuxia. Qin Guang suddenly became serious. Since it had been raised to a formal occasion, his next words and actions represented the face of Wuxia, and he could not be taken lightly. Therefore he coughed softly and his world-class acting skills burst forth. He instantly played the role of a diplomat, and smiled very formally at Agent Snow. Mr. Snow, you're exaggerating. This time, I'm only traveling and visiting a friend in a private capacity, not a state visit. Yesterday's incident was also accidental. Because my friend was involved, I took the initiative to intervene. Speaking of which, I have to thank the cooperation of your country's police. This can be considered as the two sides joining forces to fight against terrorist organizations. Mr. Snow, you know that our country's position has always been to resolutely resist and strongly condemn terrorists. Maintaining international peace is also a consistent principle of our country. Snow's mouth twitched. As expected of a vice-ministerial level official of Wuxia. Such diplomatic rhetoric came out of his mouth. It had always been us, the world police, who went to other countries to maintain peace, but you came to us to maintain peace without saying a word. Who needs your protection? But this was the truth and he could not refute it. Director, you shouldn't have sent me here. I'm not his match. But Mr. Snow, please help me explain clearly to the relevant personnel of your country that I'm involved in this operation in a private capacity, and I don't want to affect my friend. So, please help me to handle this matter in a simple manner. After chatting with Snow for a while, Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan got into Frante's car. Under the escort of a group of agents led by Snow, they first went to school to pack their belongings, and Sun Xiaoxuan said goodbye to her classmates. At that time, Brad was still a little unwilling, but because of what happened yesterday, Sun Xiaoxuan did not have the slightest good attitude towards him. Brad had wanted to make an issue of his identity as a rich family member, at least not to let Sun Xiaoxuan, her boyfriend from Wuxia, be too arrogant. But Snow, who had brought a few agents with him, really made Brad stare at them. He did not dare to say a word during the whole process, and only tried his best to guess Qin Guang's identity in his mind. Finally, the group of people got on the plane from Detroit to Yenjing. Agent Snow also let out a long breath. He finally sent off this mysterious Wuxia deputy minister. By the way, class monitor son, why are you flying to Yenjing instead of going back to Wuxian? Why don't you go directly to Wujing and go back to school? Sitting on the plane with Sun Xiaoxuan, Qin Guang asked casually. Sun Xiaoxuan blushed. How could she admit that she originally wanted to go directly to Wujing, but when she heard from Lin Jingwei that Qin Guang was recently active in Yanjing, she suddenly had a stroke when she bought the ticket and went to Yanjing. It's because Gaoye asked me to go to Badaling in Yanjing. That's right. Best friends were used to shift the blame at times like this, and Sun Xiaoxuan also learned this trick. That's good. Come to my concert the day after tomorrow. I'm not bragging, but my piano skills are much better than Kleiderman's. Other people might think of him as a joke if they heard this, but Qin Guang knew that he was really being modest. Although Kleiderman was famous in the field of piano performance, perhaps he could only be said to be a master who popularized the piano. In terms of actual skill level, Kleiderman could not be considered to have reached a higher level. He waited for Sun Xiaoxuan to say that she did not believe him, and then he would shock her on the day of the concert. He really did not know what was going on. As a person, it was addictive to showing off and slapping people in the face. He wanted to show off whenever he had the chance, and he did not even want to let go of his own people. I know. You are the best in the world. Sun Xiaoxuan said with her hands on her chest. Qin Guang covered his face. Okay, in fact, you are my brainless Qin Guang bragging. I tried to show off in front of you, but I miscalculated. Really shameless. How can there be such a thick-skinned person in the world? Sun Xiaoxuan was a veteran brainless Qin Guang bragging. He would believe anything he said. However, there were always rational people in the world. For example, the guy sitting in front of Qin Guang seemed to be a fan of Kleiderman. He straightened up from his seat and looked back at Qin Guang. His face was full of displeasure. Sir, I am a student of the Leiden Academy of Music. I had the honor of listening to Mr. Kleiderman's concert. I was amazed by his skills. Mr. Kleiderman's contribution to the popularization of the piano is obvious to all music fans around the world. I really do not understand. Where does a person like you get the courage and the face to say that you are better than Mr. Kleiderman? Piano is an art. It is not addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. It is also not a matter of who gets a high score. I cannot deny that Mr. Kleiderman's composition is not very high, but I believe that his playing skills are unique. It is because of him that many young people in this world are fascinated by the art of piano. You must apologize to Mr. Kleiderman. Not only that, you are even insulting art. I think you should also apologize to music. This guy was obviously a very stubborn person. He liked to go on the offensive at every turn. Qin Guang turned his head to look at him. Of course he was extremely unhappy. I am bragging to my sister. How is it bothering you? Do you have nothing better to do? I still have to apologize to music? Is there something wrong with you? I will slap your face. Thus he grinned. Sorry, Scram. Chapter 7:15. The young man's face stiffened. Why are you like this? What kind of manners are you talking about? Qin Guang looked up at him. I'm just like this. What? You're not happy? I'm bragging with my friend. It's none of your business. Did you take the wrong medicine or something? Sun Xiaoxuan pulled him away with a red face. Qin Guang, don't fight with others. You're a celebrity. It won't be good if word gets out. She was also quite vexed. She thought that this guy would control his temper now that he was famous, but it turned out that he was still the same firecracker as before. Fortunately, she was not his manager. Otherwise, she would have to work herself to death and clean up after him every day. Qin Guang was even more unhappy. So what if he was a celebrity? Celebrities should be pointed at by others. Why couldn't they have a temper? Celebrities were also people. Celebrities had their own temper. Celebrities also had their faces. That was true. Although what he said sounded a little boastful, I didn't say it to you, nor did I go on TV to brag about it. Why did you have to come back and brag? In other words, if a couple was lovey-dovey on the road, and the young man bragged to his girlfriend, "Your man is the most handsome man in the world," then shouldn't other men chop this braggart into pieces? Besides, the old man wasn't bragging. What he said was the hard truth. Even if he announced it on TV, there was no need for him to apologize to anyone. You what? Shut up. Then scram back to your seat and sit quietly. Don't look for trouble. A person with real manners would first take care of himself before talking about manners with others. I'm not familiar with you, and I don't want to be familiar with you either. If you scram now, I can pretend that nothing has happened. If you say one more word, I can scold you for 8 hours straight. Do you believe that I won't repeat myself? I'll scold you from Detroit all the way to Beijing. Once he started scolding, Qin Guang adhered to the principle of never losing with words. He had to use a storm-like offensive to make the other party unable to fight back and quickly admit defeat. Otherwise, if it dragged on for too long, it would only cause his words to become more and more low-end, and in the end, it would become a pitiful shrew swearing on the streets. "You bastard." The poor young man was caught off guard by Qin Guang's surprise attack. They were both first-class passengers, but he felt like he was not Qin Guang's opponent at all. This guy is really good at talking. He must have cultivated in the market for 10 years, right? What are you doing? Tell me, is there something wrong with you? If you don't believe me, let others judge for you. You want me to apologize to whoever I want? Are you the god of morals? The difference between the two of them was just too great. This pitiful student from the Leiden Academy of Music had no way of retaliating against Qin Guang's barrage of attacks. He was nothing more than trash. The Pan Am flight attendant with blonde hair and blue eyes had already noticed the situation. She hurried over and said, "Sir, gentlemen, the plane is about to take off. Please return to your seats and fasten your seat belts." That's right. What kind of manners are you? You're making trouble on the plane. You don't even know how to pay attention to the international impact. You're from the Leiden Academy of Music? You're learning to cook, aren't you? Don't embarrass us Wuxia people. The young man was about to explode, but the plane was about to take off. The flight attendant reacted quickly and stopped him. She said seriously, Sir, please don't make trouble on the plane. Otherwise you'll be blacklisted by the airline." "It's him who has been scolding me. Sir, this passenger has been sitting in his seat. It's you who has been turning your head to talk to him." The flight attendant said something fair. Of course, there was another very important reason. She couldn't understand Qin Guang's street Chinese and he spoke too fast. Okay, it's all my fault. I'm not well-mannered." The young man sat back angrily. He was still unwilling. He didn't look back and just shouted, "You wait. You'll see when we get to Yenjing." Qin Guang was amused. Yo, not bad. You can't beat me with words, so you ask me to fight? Come on, really. I've been challenged by many people in my life, but I've never been afraid. Sun Xiaoshuan saw that he couldn't hold him back, so he simply covered his mouth with his hand. All right. Don't talk too much. You're already an adult." The young man in front was also angry and laughed. "Don't think I'm afraid of you because I study music. To tell you the truth, I was the champion of Yenjing Youth Taekwondo competition when I was in high school." Sun Xiaoshuan had nothing to say to the young man in front of him. "Can't each of us talk less? You can't beat him. He's the strongest person in the world." "What a joke. Then I'm the reincarnation of Bruce Lee." "Boy, you've got guts. Don't run when we get to Yenjing." Qin Guang snorted. The Pan Am stewardess was rendered speechless by the two of them. However, even though the two of them were scolding, they still sat in their respective seats. Forget it. Let them do whatever they want. Just as she was about to turn around and leave, she took another look at Qin Guang. "This bald man looks familiar?" Yesterday, when they were having sex at his boyfriend's house, his TV was playing the World Arm Wrestling competition. "This man seems to be right, Qin." The Pan Am stewardess looked at the angry young man playing the piano in front of her with sympathy. "Forget it. As long as the two of them don't fight on the plane, it's fine. Poor guy. He'll be sent to the hospital, right?" Sun Xiaoshuan quietly poked Qin Guang's waist. "If you're recognized and posted on the internet, it will affect your reputation, right?" Qin Guang shrugged indifferently. "It's fine. I'm not afraid of being bitten when there are too many lice. Since the day I decided to take off my mask and become a celebrity, I never thought of living with my tail between my legs. Besides, I didn't say anything wrong. Anyway, there are a lot of people scolding me on the internet. It doesn't matter if there are more people scolding me. It's not like I'll lose anything." "All right. I'm scared of you." Sun Xiaoshuan couldn't do anything to him, but he was secretly happy. If he really became the perfect lover of the public, what would happen? His current situation was actually pretty good. He wasn't perfect and he had his own temper. Some people liked him and naturally some people hated him. Anyway, no matter what, I'll be the person who likes him the most. Recently, Qin Guang had become a hot topic in China. The netizens hadn't even gotten a clue about the women incident, and the popularity hadn't subsided yet. Then he started all kinds of things. He had to play the piano, sharpen pencils in Guinness World, and live stream arm wrestling. There was no other celebrity in the world who could cause more trouble than him. Even at this moment, Qin Guang could sense the threads of faith pouring in from all over the world. It was rare for him to participate in a competition overseas, and his greatest harvest wasn't just the acknowledgement of his Qilin arms, but it also allowed him to gain international fame. Many foreign friends who didn't know him and didn't pay attention to him had also heard of his name because of his incredible achievements in the international arm wrestling competition. The spread of information had a certain spontaneity. A person would first find out through a certain channel that there was such a very special person. He was obviously very thin, but he had defeated all the heroes in the international arm wrestling competition and became the world's strongest arm wrestler. Then, people who knew about this information would become curious about this amazing person. Then they would automatically search for relevant information about him. If this person could really convince them, they would mention this name when chatting with their friends, making Qin Guang's name fly further and further. Then, many of the things that Qin Guang had done before would appear in front of more and more people and be remembered by them. Maybe they would even worship him. For example, now, even if the world in the cup was full of faith points, there would still be new threads of faith points coming. It was just that due to the limitations of the heavenly Holy Grail, it couldn't get higher production. But at this time, the racing god training ground and the piano world could enjoy some of the aftertaste of fame. Although the growth of faith points was slow, the effect was real. When the plane finally took off and entered the stratosphere, the small TV on the back of the first-class seats began to play a program. In addition, passengers could also choose to use their headphones to listen to some music or to watch some variety shows. The superhumane Pan Am flight attendant did a very considerate thing. Under her strong suggestion, the program that was played by default on the TV was the highlights of the international arm wrestling competition that had just ended yesterday. Well, you could also call it Rai Chen's Book of Pretentiousness. At this time, the Leiden music boy was still sulking in his heart. He was cursing Qin Guang in his heart, but because he couldn't beat Qin Guang with words, he didn't dare to stand up and turn around to provoke him. When the power of the TV finally came on, he took out his headphones and was about to listen to some piano music, but he was attracted by the image on the screen. The most incredible and strongest man in history. The god from the east. The arm strength of a god. A rather eye-catching and shameless title appeared in front of him, so much so that he thought he was seeing things. He shook his head to make sure that he wasn't seeing things. Who is this? Is he exaggerating? The music boy who had been traveling in Detroit for the past few days knew about this competition, but he didn't pay much attention to it. It seemed that the champion was Chinese? Interesting, then I'll take a look. 10 seconds later he was completely dumbfounded. What the F***CK? Why does he look so familiar? Isn't this the guy sitting behind me? Qin Guang? The name sounded a little familiar, as if he had heard it somewhere before. After that, the poor music boy couldn't be bothered to listen to the song anymore. He blankly watched the highlights of Qin Guang's competition. The more he watched, the more speechless he became. My heart hurts, I'm so scared. He had thought that Sun Xiaoxuan was joking. He didn't think that the guy behind him was really the strongest person in the world. What else could the young musician say other than gulping as he watched the beast press the monsters that were several times his size onto the table without being able to put up any resistance? Thinking about how he had arranged a fight with him, the boy felt creeped out. Should I find a chance to apologize to him? However, he felt very unwilling. That guy dared to insult his idol. If he apologized to him, wouldn't it mean that he agreed with what he said? So what should I do? Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan, who were sitting in the back, were also watching the highlights on the small TV. They didn't even need to think to know how scared the guy in front of them was. Qin Guang quietly unbuckled his seatbelt, stood on his tiptoes and took a peek from behind. He then sat back down with a smile. He's watching. You didn't see his face. It's pale. Sun Xiaoxuan was also curious. He also raised his neck to take a peek. He sat down and covered his mouth, afraid that he would laugh out loud. He didn't know why, although he felt a little embarrassed and apologetic to do bad things with Qin Guang. It was really fun. Brother Xiaolong, we agreed to have a good chat when we arrive in Beijing. If you're not convinced, you can call more people. Qin Guang said with a smile. It would be boring if he didn't find something to do during the long journey. Since this guy was so sincere, he might as well kill time with him. Sun Xiaoxuan pulled him again. Don't do this. The music boy was about to cry. Who would have thought that you were really so strong? Why did you change my name? My name is not Bruce Lee. Although he was cursing in his heart, the music boy smartly decided to cover his head with the blanket next to him. I can't mess with you, so I'll pretend to be dead. The flight attendants in the front row saw that they had achieved their goal. They smiled with satisfaction. They had once again resolved an international conflict. They didn't know that there were also two people in the cockpit lounge staring at the small TV in front of them. They were secretly thinking that there was something wrong with that guy. How could a normal person of this size have such strength? Since that's the case, I'll just close the cockpit door when I make my move. The flight time from Detroit to Beijing was about 14 hours. It was relatively long, and the passengers in the first-class cabin would have a lot of interaction with each other. Many people in China who had no interaction with each other got to know each other in the first-class cabin of such a long-distance flight. Eventually, it developed into a very important business cooperation. Qin Guang was now a celebrity. Although the music boy didn't recognize him, there were other people in the cabin who could recognize him. One after another, people who thought that they had the right status came up to talk to Qin Guang. They exchanged contact information and so on. They could talk about advertising endorsements or what Qin Guang was going to do in the future. They would definitely support him and ask for his autograph before leaving. Qin Guang had nothing to do anyway, so he was very patient. Halfway through the flight, the music boy gradually recognized Qin Guang's identity from his conversation with other people. He finally remembered that not long ago, someone had posted a video of a Chinese artist's concert on the school's BBS. The video focused on Qin Guang playing 2 different instruments. It even caused a controversy within the school. Some people thought that although his technique looked scary, it didn't mean that his performance was really that good. Playing the piano didn't mean that the faster you played, the better you would be. But some people did an in-depth analysis of his sound source and came to the conclusion that although Qin Guang's performance style was mediocre and seemed to have no special characteristics, he had a terrifying ability to restore the original music. It was hard to judge his artistic level, but his performance skills were definitely the best in the world. The music boy silently looked up at the ceiling of the cabin. Fortunately, I didn't bet on eating 3 pounds of sh*t. Thank God. Chapter 7:16. The plane took off at about 12:40 a.m. Washington time and arrived at Yanjing at 2:45 p.m. the next day. On the plane, Qin Guang chatted with Sun Xiaoxuan for a while, chatted with the successful people who came to strike up a conversation with him for a while, or read the script, or put on his headphones to listen to music when he was bored. Unknowingly, about 12 hours had passed. The sky was still bright outside, and the plane was flying straight across the Pacific Ocean. It was about dusk here. However, the cabin gradually became quiet, and only whispers could be heard from time to time. A few of the bosses who had just struck up a conversation with Qin Guang were flipping through the documents with sleepy eyes. Everyone's biological clock was about to go to sleep. Qin Guang wrapped himself in the quilt. Sun Xiaoxuan, who was beside him, had already fallen asleep. The girl's energy was not particularly good, probably because she had not fully recovered from the shock yesterday. Qin Guang pulled the quilt a little higher for her. As for accidentally touching something in the process of pulling the quilt, forget it, he did not care about those details. She would not know anyway. Before falling asleep, he tried to sink his mind into the heavenly Holy Grail to take a look. Lily was still the same as before. This time she was completely in seclusion. It was a pity that he did not bring an anti-fog lamp with him, so he could not see anything. As for the deer cry flower, no, it was now called the deer cry fruit. The huge green fruit was still hanging at the top of her stem, swaying even though there was no wind. It looked full of energy. Obviously, the 200 cubic centimeters of blood he gave her last time had greatly nourished her. This scene gave rise to a vicious thought in Qin Guang's heart. Is my blood really that nourishing? It can actually make the deer cry flower, which was already dozens of meters tall, jump a lot higher into the sky. According to the law of conservation of matter, this drop of the old man's blood can at least strengthen a generation of Chinese people, right? Why don't I try punching myself, get some nosebleeds, and then drink some of my own blood to nourish myself? Maybe my perfect body will come out, and the effect will be even better than Guijing drinking snake blood. Perpetual motion machine achieved. Alright, this is pure nonsense. Qin Guang threw this terrifying thought out of his mind, then closed his eyes and went to sleep. Before he fell asleep, he felt a little uneasy for a moment. Perhaps the power of the Holy Grail that surrounded him had collided with the mysterious and profound threads of fate, affecting fate and giving rise to a sense of alarm in his heart. However, he did not take it seriously. What could possibly happen on the plane? Other than a hijacking, it was a plane crash. What kind of joke was this? Such a melodramatic incident was so vulgar in novels. As the owner of the heavenly Holy Grail, how could the old man be so unlucky as to encounter such a thing? Holy shit, I really bumped into it? How sudden. I wasn't prepared at all, and this old man was hijacked. Qin Guang, who had just woken up, had a perplexed expression on his face as he listened to the arrogant and sinister laughter from the broadcast. Sun Xiaoxuan, who was beside him, shook his arm with all his might. Everyone, congratulations on becoming an honorable member of our crusade. The other party had obviously taken over the cockpit, but Chen Guang and the other first-class passengers had no idea about it. Therefore, the hijack was undoubtedly carried out by the crew. The flight attendants of Pan Am also walked out of the lounge, forcing themselves to calm down. They had experience in dealing with terrorist attacks in their training, but in a situation like this where the plane was hijacked without even seeing the person, even the most dedicated flight attendants could only be bystanders. Right now, the rear door of the cockpit had been completely locked. This was originally meant to protect the cockpit in case of an emergency, but it could not withstand the enemy's attack from the inside. What should we do? What should we do now? Sun Xiaoxuan mumbled to herself as she tightly held onto Chen Guang's arm. She was a little out of her wits, but she tried very hard to calm herself down. Chen Guang patted her hand. Don't worry, I'm here. He appeared very calm, but in his heart he was already wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf. Sister Lioli, help me. Madame Lioli, help me. Madame Lioli, something big has happened. We're done for. Your savior has quit the game. Well, it was useless. Lioli had overdrawn herself yesterday. She was really exhausted. Don't be so rich. Be self-reliant, my brother Chen Guang. Lu Minggua's crisp, girlish voice came over. It sounded like she was teasing, but the content was too sad. Chen Guang's emotions weren't stable at all. Self-reliance, my ass. I'm just a pitiful passenger, all right? I hope everyone will be more honest and cherish their lives. You are all our precious hostages and our honored guests. The hijacker in the cabin spoke again, and it sounded a little more reassuring. It seemed that their tendency to self-destruct was not strong. They had something to ask of them. Perhaps they wanted to take hostages in exchange so they were safe for the time being. Except for Chen Guang. This guy suddenly added another sentence. He was simply crazy. Chen Guang could not even roll his eyes. You're poisonous. I don't even know you. I have no enmity with you. Why are you targeting me like this? Who the hell are you? What? Chen Guang replied loudly. Mr. Chen, don't worry. I'll tell you when we arrive at Ioha base. As for now, you just sit quietly in your seat and wait. After that, the guy went silent and the course of the plane quickly changed. Obviously, the hijacker had quietly adjusted the direction. He didn't know where the Ioha base he mentioned was. It sounded like a country in West Asia. It seemed to be very scary. Chen Guang was dumbfounded. He thought to himself, when did I offend the terrorists over there? Why are they targeting me? Wait, the two unlucky extremists from last night? One of them seemed to be called Hamid. That's right, there's a name in both the place and the person. There must be some unspeakable connection between the two. This analysis was reasonable and convincing. Well, don't care about those details. In short, I'm being targeted and being retaliated against. This hijacking may be a coincidence or the other party may be targeting me. Anyway, it's not a good thing. Alas, this retribution came a little too fast. It seemed that it was time to let them see the power of the director of the Wuxia Special Affairs Bureau. In terms of administrative level, the old man was the highest level agent in the world, although he was useless. Chen Guang tried to wave to the flight attendant and called her over. He asked in a low voice, "Is there any way to open your cabin door?" The flight attendant shook her head helplessly. The other party is the co-pilot. He has the highest authority to control the plane. They also used physical methods and the system to double-lock the cabin door. It can't be opened. What if I use force directly? That alloy structure needs about more than 10 tons of pulling force. Sir, can you do it? The flight attendant's eyes lit up. After all, she had just seen his heroic performance in the World Arm Wrestling competition on a small TV. Chen Guang replied firmly, "Of course. Impossible." The flight attendant rolled her eyes and didn't say anything more. She returned to her seat and sat down. Chen Guang sat up straight again and comforted Sun Xiaoxuan, who was next to him. "It's okay. We will not die." Sun Xiaoxuan looked at Chen Guang with a worried face. "But they seem to treat you." Chen Guang waved his hand. "It doesn't matter. Don't you know who I am?" "Really?" "Of course. I swear. We will not die." Chen Guang calculated in his heart. If it didn't work, he would use all his assets to buy his life. What these terrorists wanted was either the release of their important people or money. Chen Guang didn't have much now, but he didn't feel bad about spending money. The old masters in Yanjing wouldn't turn a blind eye to it. They would definitely try their best to negotiate with them. At this time, the atmosphere in the cabin was extremely depressing. No one was mentally prepared for the sudden hijacking. The criminals quickly took control of the entire plane, and everyone in the cabin became fish on the chopping board without any resistance. Anyone would feel pain in the ass, and the situation in the economy class wouldn't be any better. The music guy in the front was already scared out of his wits. Eavesdropping on the conversation between Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan, he suddenly sat up straight and looked at Qin Guang with excitement. "Mr. Qin, do you have a solution?" Qin Guang rolled his eyes. "Are you stupid? I have a chicken feather solution. Since you are also sitting in first class, you can calculate how much money your family has and whether it is enough to buy your life. Don't disturb me. I am busy." He was almost speechless at this idiot. "I am thinking of a solution, but why are you asking me? Are you thinking that I am not conspicuous enough?" At this time, many staff members, including the captain, were already lying in a pool of blood in the cockpit. Two men wearing Pan Am staff uniforms were sitting in front of the control panel with their legs crossed, chatting leisurely. "Malahi, are we really going to kill that Wuxia man called Right Chin when we arrive at Ioha? He seems to be a senior official in Wuxia. We don't have the final say on this. We have to ask Professor Alamo. Master Alamo's nephews died in the Holy War yesterday, and that girl was one of the hostages. Later on, that girl stayed in the hospital with Lechin for a night. Master Alamo thinks that Hamad and the others might have died at Lechin's hands. No wonder Professor Alamo suddenly asked us to take action. These damn heathens, we will avenge Brother Hammer." Of course, but Hammer and the others didn't die in vain. They raised $30 million for Professor Alamo. They are the most devout warriors of God, and their deaths should be honored with the highest sacrifice. That's right. But Right Chin seems to be very rich. Wouldn't it be a pity to kill him just like that? No, no, no. I also heard something else. Our ally, our closest comrade in arms, our instructors seem to have a lot of conflicts with the Wuxia government recently. They want to get W80 Chin, and now their people should be waiting at Ioha base. The Terminator instructors? Yes. Poor fellow. Falling into the hands of those instructors will be a fate worse than death. Heathens don't deserve sympathy. I'm sorry, Malahi. At this time, in a place where no one could see, Qin Guang was standing in the Cloud City array of the Cup Realm. After a short hesitation, he finally realized that the current situation was worse than he had imagined. Lioli had fallen into a deep sleep. She didn't move even when a lion roared beside her ear. When he tried to touch her with his hand, it would always be repelled. Lu Mingwa didn't have enough authority to mobilize the Heavenly Holy Grail and couldn't help much. If he didn't think of a solution and allowed this situation to continue developing, it seemed like he would really be finished. He thought of an ultimate move that he hadn't used for a long time. The aftereffects were very scary, but it was definitely useful. If it was a coincidence that the plane had been hijacked, he might really be willing to follow the other party to that whatever Ioha base. But the other party had directly called out his name, so he would definitely be given special attention. If he really went to their base, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to escape even if he had wings. He would thank the heavens if he could even beg for death, not to mention that Sun Xiaoxuan was still on the plane. Forget it, let's do it this way. Who could he blame for encountering such a situation? Qin Guang's eyes widened. This was the first time he had actively exercised his authority as the owner of the Heavenly Holy Grail and tried to communicate with the Holy Grail while standing in Cloud City. Lu Mingwa, who had originally planned to laugh at him, was suddenly shocked. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Qin Guang's eyes became brighter and brighter. He kept recalling the scene when he first sensed the realm of destiny. His mind roared crazily, using a commanding tone to shout at the Heavenly Holy Grail. Heavenly Holy Grail. Give me the realm of destiny. That's right, Lioli could no longer be counted on, and he didn't have any ability to change his current situation. He wanted to use the special training cup's realm at the last minute, but his faith value just happened to be 20 or 30,000 short. He couldn't even afford the beggar's version of the realm in the cup. Otherwise he would have learned a lock-picking skill and tried to open that cabin door. Now that things had come to this, he could only personally sound the death knell of the unlucky fellow in the cockpit. Lu Mingwa was dumbfounded. Crazy, you've really gone crazy. Sister Lioli said that you've already used the Bell of Destiny once. Don't you dare mess around. Qin Guang snorted. What else can I do? Wait for death? It's better to rely on myself than on others. You guys can't be relied on, so I have to rely on myself. Don't go overboard. The power of the second realm of punishment is beyond your imagination. Right now, the Holy Grail is only at the level of one-line heavens, it can't protect you. Lu Mingwa was extremely anxious. Her vines once again grew wildly from her roots, sweeping towards Qin Guang in an overwhelming manner, as if she wanted to control him. But before Lu Mingguo's vines could get close, they were shattered by the power of the heavenly Holy Grail summoned by Qin Guang. She couldn't get close at all, so she could only watch helplessly. Qin Guang's figure gradually floated up. More and more power of the Holy Grail forcibly approached him and gathered around him, allowing him to fly higher and higher in the sky above Cloud City. Finally, gradually, the void in front of him exploded with thunder. A space-time tunnel that was completely different from the one he used to enter the realm in the cup slowly opened up in front of him with thousands of lightning bolts. Qin Guang looked into the tunnel. The unique majestic aura of the realm of life that didn't belong to the nine heavens had only been emitted, and when it lightly brushed against his body, it made his heart tremble violently. In his mind, the illusion of facing the hell-like might of the god of hell appeared again. There seemed to be a voice in the sky roaring at him, wanting him to submit to fate. In his eyes, it was as if he could see the towering mountain, the great river that swallowed the galaxy, the Kunpeng with a wingspan of tens of thousands of miles, and the majestic city that made people want to worship it. But the most terrifying thing was still the huge bell that connected the heavens and suppressed the mountains below. It was the bell of fate that affected the operation of the stars and suppressed all things in the world. Qin Guang took a deep breath, and suddenly plunged into the space-time tunnel that was filled with lightning and thunder. Last time, Lioli escorted him to the end of the tunnel and used his face to pierce through the barrier at the end of the tunnel. She also used the incarnation of the Divine Emperor and spat out the words of the Divine Emperor. She paid a huge price to finally help him pull out a strand of the power of fate. This time, Qin Guang had to rely on himself. Chapter 717. With every inch he moved forward, at least 1,000 bolts of lightning struck his soul. Every bolt was like the edge of a blade, causing him heart-wrenching pain. Every moment felt like he was being sliced by 1,000 blades. He didn't know how powerful it was when he was brought in by Lioli, but this time he had to rely on himself. Only then did he understand how difficult it was to obtain a strand of the power of destiny. Just approaching it made his soul feel like it was about to be torn apart. He didn't even know how terrifying the pressure would be after entering the realm of fate. Not only that, after Qin Guang entered the tunnel, although the entrance to the tunnel gradually disappeared from Cloud City, the power of destiny emanating from the realm of fate still filled the entire sea of clouds. Even Deer Cry Fruit was suppressed to the point where she felt weak. Sister Lioli, really stop pretending to be dead. Your savior has gone to seek death. It was useless. No matter how Deer Cry Fruit shouted, Lioli didn't move. In the tunnel, Qin Guang's soul was struck by the power of lightning again and again. However, it was restored by the power of the Holy Grail again and again. Just moving forward in the tunnel felt like he had died thousands of times. Fortunately, although the process was extremely painful, he was still the noble master of the Holy Grail. He couldn't really die here. Thanks to his long and arduous training in the realm of cups, he had rich experience with this kind of fake death that was similar to online games. Anyway, no matter how painful it was, he wouldn't really die, so he didn't have much fear in his heart. The closer he got to the end of the tunnel, the stronger the aura emanating from the realm of fate became. It made every step forward more difficult, and the frequency at which his soul was struck by lightning increased. As a special realm of cups that didn't belong to the nine heavens, the realm of fate was obviously not as obedient as the other realms of cups created by the Holy Grail. It was also particularly unfriendly towards Qin Guang, the master of the Holy Grail. Fortunately, the Holy Grail was slightly stronger. The speed at which it healed Qin Guang's soul was always faster than the speed at which it destroyed it. Finally, after walking in this long tunnel for perhaps 10 years or perhaps 100 years, when Qin Guang was about to completely lose the concept of time, he once again stood at the end of the tunnel. Taking a deep breath, he raised his head and looked forward. Through the barrier in front of him, he saw the indomitable bell of destiny slowly rotating in the air. Mysterious runes were flickering as the bell of destiny rotated. Every single talisman seemed to represent a type of energy of destiny. They were born invisibly and dissipated into nothingness, and they suffused into space. They imperceptibly controlled the destinies of countless living beings. Countless existences that resembled both immortals and humans flew toward the bell of destiny. Halfway there, they landed on the ground and began to stagger. With every step they took, they kowtowed as if they were worshipping with the utmost sincerity. It wasn't just these humanoid creatures. Even the large and petite exotic beasts and flying beasts were doing the same thing. They kept moving forward, and with every step they took, they seemed to be tempered and tested by the bell of destiny. The power of the giant bell exerted a terrifying pressure on them, but at the same time, it was helping them become stronger. When the pressure exerted by the bell of destiny exceeded the limits of their endurance, they would be sent flying. When they were fully prepared again, they would appear under the bell of destiny and attack it once more. The entire realm of destiny was born because of the bell of destiny. Since the day these living beings were born in the realm of destiny, they had an indelible and devout faith in this giant bell from the depths of their souls. The reason they cultivated and strengthened themselves was to get closer to their only God, the sacred bell that they spoke of. Looking at this scene, Qin Guang didn't know how to describe his feelings. The immortals and exotic beasts in the realm of destiny seemed to be extremely powerful, but compared to the incomplete souls in the Sea of Transient, they were really no different. The bell of destiny seemed to bestow them with power, but wasn't it also holding them tightly in the palm of its hand? No matter how powerful these people became, they couldn't break free from the threads of destiny that bound them. Their power would eventually become the most fundamental energy of the realm of destiny and be controlled by the bell of destiny. They would become the arms of the giant bell that controlled the destinies of all living beings in the myriad worlds. Fortunately, I am the owner of the transcendent Holy Grail. No matter how powerful this realm of destiny is, it is only one of the 3,000 worlds that I have. Now lend me a strand of your power. Qin Guang's eyes narrowed, and he suddenly took a step forward. He stretched out his palm and directly broke through the barrier in front of him and reached inside. In the void of the realm of destiny, a giant silhouette of a palm suddenly appeared, but this palm was even larger than the Kunpeng. Roar! Just like last time, all the living beings in the realm of destiny immediately noticed this uninvited guest, and they all turned their heads to glare angrily at this hand. Not only that, but the bell of destiny also let out a buzzing sound. It was enraged by this fellow who had disturbed its slumber time and time again. The sound of the bell of destiny made all the living beings in the realm of destiny even more furious. Countless immortals and strange beasts flew up from the ground and pounced on the silhouette of light condensed from Qin Guang's palm. Ray after ray of dazzling light bombarded Qin Guang's silhouette of light, shattering it into pieces and showing signs of disintegration in an instant. Qin Guang felt as if his palm had been placed into a pot of boiling oil. These fellows were as small as ants compared to his hand, and their magical weapons were so small that they could be ignored. However, they were as numerous as the hairs on a cow, and their attacks came wave after wave, sticking to his hand like boiling oil, destroying his silhouette of light layer by layer. Fortunately, the power of the Holy Grail constantly appeared out of thin air and poured into his spiritual body, constantly healing his injuries. Otherwise, his hand would have really melted. He tried to grab it with his hand, but he couldn't catch anything. The bell of destiny didn't respond to his summons and sent him a wisp of the power of destiny. Instead, it kept exerting pressure on him in an attempt to drive him away. Last time, Lori was able to succeed, perhaps because she used her status as a divine emperor to negotiate with the bell of destiny, or perhaps because the conditions for mobilizing the power of destiny for the first time weren't as harsh as now. This spiritual bell seemed to be very willful today. If a tiger doesn't show its might, you'll really think it's a sick cat. The one in front of you is your master. Qin Guang dashed forward, and his body completely broke through the barrier and stood completely in the realm of destiny. When he first entered the realm of destiny, his body was actually the same size as the bell of destiny, and he stood on the ground while his head reached the sky. However, his foundation was still too shallow, and he didn't last long before the pressure exerted by the bell of destiny caused his spiritual body to shrink. His body quickly returned to the size of an ordinary person, and he was about the same size as those ordinary immortals flying around him. Qin Guang tried to move his fingers, but he found it extremely difficult to do so. He even involuntarily floated backward, as if he was about to be pushed back into the tunnel by the bell of destiny. Chapter 7:18. Outsider. A sword-wielding celestial maiden screamed as she threw a flying sword at him. You damned freak. A huge man over 3 meters tall with a heavy hammer in his hand threw a flying hammer at Qin Guang. Roar. This was a Qilin beast that stood on colorful clouds. As it roared, a terrifying energy shot out from its mouth. The Kunpeng with a wingspan of tens of thousands of kilometers took on a human form. It had an eagle beak and peacock plume on its head, and it waved a colorful light that swept toward Qin Guang. Even further away there were countless natives of the realm of life flying over. All of them had ferocious looks on their faces, and all of them were filled with hatred. This bell was indeed not easy to ring. If Lioli were here, she might be able to kill these rascals in an instant if she used her divine emperor true body. However, Qin Guang really did not know what to do. He gritted his teeth and used a stupid method. He released the power of the Holy Grail behind him like a rocket, and then he forced himself to charge forward. Get lost. No matter how these fellows attacked him, Qin Guang could not be bothered to retaliate. In any case, the power of the Holy Grail could heal his injuries. Thus, in this vast and almost boundless realm of life, his spiritual form turned into a meteor and crashed into the Bell of Fate. No matter how furious and crazy the natives of the realm of life were, they could not stop him at all. Anyway, you can't kill me. Even if you scatter me, I will still charge forward even if I turn into dregs. What really troubled and pressured Qin Guang was not the attacks of these natives, but the constant pressure from the Bell of Fate. The closer he got, the stronger the pressure from the Bell of Fate. At this time he was in a spiritual form and his body was not stable. Halfway through his flight, his body had already shrunk to about a meter tall. Stop him. Quick, stop him. Don't let him get close to the holy bell. Disperse this intruder. The roars of the aboriginals rose and fell. There was even an existence known as an immortal sovereign wearing golden armor that stood before Qin Guang, trying to use his body to block Qin Guang's advance. However, it was useless. At this moment, Qin Guang's body was further compressed, turning into a round ball the size of a ping pong. Although the pressure on him was increasing, his speed was getting faster and faster under the power of the Holy Grail. He pierced through the golden-armored immortal venerable's chest. These so-called immortals and strange beasts cultivated the power bestowed upon them by the Bell of Destiny. Qin Guang, on the other hand, possessed the power of the Holy Grail, which gave him an innate advantage in terms of power. How could they stop Qin Guang, the so-called outsider, who was actually the master of their holy bell? Gradually, Qin Guang became smaller and smaller, from a ping-pong ball to a glass bead, then to a mung bean and then to a sesame seed. The smaller his body, the stronger and sharper his spirit body. Even though he was in his spirit body state in terms of hardness, he was at least thousands of times harder than the hardest diamond on earth. It didn't matter if it was the golden-armored immortal sovereign, the silver-armored immortal king, the Qilin, the golden-winged rock, or the black tortoise, it was useless. Finally, Qin Guang rushed to within 1,000 miles of the Bell of Destiny, and the natives in the realm of destiny could no longer stop him. Even the most powerful natives couldn't get within 1,000 miles of the Bell of Destiny. Just like that, he turned into a speck of dust and crashed into the Bell of Destiny. Dong! A loud sound rang out and the realm of destiny shook. The sound of the Bell of Destiny resounded throughout the world, and the natives who were still excited just a second ago, fell to the ground. As for Qin Guang, he flew back. It's time for him to leave. A wisp of invisible power of destiny was bitten into the mouth of the speck of dust Qin Guang. With my spirit body I will shake fate, sound the bell and send you on your way. With a bang, Qin Guang fell out of the space-time tunnel and slammed into Cloud City. Lioli was still meditating as if she didn't notice the drastic change. Qin Guang didn't disturb her anymore. After resting for an entire day in Cloud City, he pulled the fate power in his hand, which was much thicker than the last time, and left the realm of destiny in the cup. At the moment when Qin Guang's figure completely disappeared, Lioli suddenly opened her eyes, and a smug smile appeared on her face. Brat, you only know how to squeeze me every day, it's time for you to experience more wind and rain. Sister Lioli, you're pretending? Lu Mingwa noticed Lioli's smile. Lioli replied tiredly, half of it is pretending and the other half is real. In his current situation I really can't help much. Other than ringing the Bell of Destiny, there really isn't a second choice. Then what about the realm of punishment? Lu Mingwa asked worriedly. Lioli nodded at first, then shook her head. It's fine. Although the heavenly Holy Grail is only in the one-line heavens realm, between the two of us, one has fused with the soul of the Holy Grail, and the other has fused with the body of the Holy Grail, we can protect him. It's just that he has to suffer a lot, right? Lu Mingwa said with some schadenfreude. Lioli nodded. Of course, only by suffering the most difficult of all can one become a god of gods. How can it be so easy to be the master of the 3,000 worlds? Only someone as thick-skinned as him would be able to withstand it. Less than 5 seconds had passed since Qin Guang returned to the modern realm. In the eyes of Sun Xiaoxuan, who was beside him, he was only slightly dazed when he raised the cup to drink water. It was just a little strange. Why did he become so dispirited after being dazed for a while? Qin Guang didn't have the mood to talk to Sun Xiaoxuan, but closed his eyes and silently chanted in his heart. F***ck off. Go die. Scum who dares to hijack my plane. Go to hell. I curse you to have a heart attack. Gout attack. Even if you don't have a heart attack, go die. Even if you don't have gout, go die with epilepsy, or else I curse you to be allergic to peanut milk. Go die. Well, in fact, he didn't know how to use this power of destiny. After coming out, the mysterious power completely disappeared, so he didn't know how this thing worked. He was afraid that the Holy Grail and the power of destiny didn't understand his intentions, so he created this honey curse. After waiting for a few minutes, intensive gunshots came from the cockpit again. The honey curse worked. The guy who hijacked the plane is going to be cursed to death. Bastard. Why are you still alive? Bang. Fako. Marashi. Bang bang bang. The following 3,000 words were omitted. Anyway, it was a fierce gunfight, all kinds of thrills, all kinds of excitement, and all kinds of special effects. After waiting for another 3 or 4 minutes, with a click, the cockpit door finally opened. Covered in blood, the captain stood in front of the door, clutching his chest. Looking at the few Pan Am flight attendants in front of him, he shed 2 lines of tears. I killed them. I tried my best. I'm sorry. Tell Elsa that Dad loves her. Dad didn't let her down. Dad is a hero. As the middle-aged captain spoke, he slowly collapsed, and his heart slowly stopped beating. He was shot at least 5 times and he was dead. But he did his duty as a captain. He didn't die after being shot twice, but passed out because of the pain. As if he felt the call of destiny, he woke up again. He remembered his wife who died on September 11th. With his last will, he didn't want his plane to be completely hijacked by terrorists like the plane in that tragedy. He picked up the gun on the ground and fought with Marashi and the other 2 criminals until the last moment. Qin Guang also rushed to the cockpit door. Seeing the resolute captain fall in a pool of blood, he clenched his fists. Dude, you won't die in vain. You are indeed a great warrior. Chapter 719. Oh no. Captain Frank. Wake up. Wake up. Oh my God. Oh my God. It's over. What should we do now? When the captain closed his eyes completely, there was a sudden wail in the aisle. The Pan Am flight attendants were in despair. Their sadness was beyond words. Standing to the side, Qin Guang could only watch on helplessly. Fine, it's definitely not a happy thing to witness the death of a martyr. But it's still a good thing that the danger has been resolved. Don't be like this. The dead are already dead and we still have to live on. It's over. It's all over now. At this moment, the flight attendant who had been talking to Qin Guang suddenly covered her face and knelt down, crying bitterly. Hey, what's wrong? Qin Guang patted her on the shoulder. Don't be like this. We have to be strong. Captain Frank's daughter is called Elsa, right? Is she still a student? It's okay. I'll be responsible for her tuition. No, Mr. Qin, that's not the problem. The flight attendant shook her head and said, now Captain Frank has been sacrificed. We just went in and saw that all the crew members were sacrificed. We only received the most basic piloting training. Now no one can fly a plane. Qin Guang was dumbfounded. This problem was really terrifying. Although the pilot did not seem to be particularly important in the process of automatic cruising, once there was an emergency takeoff and landing, how could they fly without a pilot? Although the current autopilot system was intelligent, it should not have evolved to the extent that it could completely replace the pilot. It was a little too unlucky. When it rains, it pours. Not long after, the purser came back with something that looked like a remote control with a worried look on her face. Everyone come here. She gathered all the flight attendants together. Qin Guang also went over, but there were 2 other flight attendants who went to the cockpit to stop them. The tone they used was more or less the same. They said that the criminals had been killed and everything was under control. Everyone should not panic and please sit in your seats and not move around. Although the passengers at the back were skeptical, there was no point in continuing to make a fuss, so they really settled down. Qin Guang also went to the door to maintain order. After all, he regarded himself as the victim and felt that he should do his part. Alright, everything's fine now. What's the situation now? Purser, please tell us. I'm the director of the Wuxia Special Affairs Bureau, the most outstanding special agent in Wuxia. I can think of a solution to any problem. I'll get through this together with everyone. After helping maintain order and comforting Sun Xiaoxuan, Qin Guang decided to brag a little so that the flight attendants would have some confidence and not be so tired from looking at him. Now we have 3 very serious problems. First, Deputy Captain Murahi set the plane's autopilot to a very strange place in West Asia. It should be the Ioha base that they mentioned just now. Deputy Captain Murahi destroyed the communication device, so we can't ask for help. He also encrypted the system a second time. I'm afraid we can only continue to fly to Ioha. Qin Guang's eyelids twitched. This problem was indeed serious. Second, we no longer have professional pilot training and certified staff on the plane. Even if we can find a way to change the course, I'm afraid we won't be able to land safely. Qin Guang nodded repeatedly. The purser was right. This problem was also quite serious. Of course, considering the third point, the 2 points I mentioned before have become very irrelevant. Qin Guang was overjoyed. This purser was so annoying. She must be deliberately pretending to be weak. She must be a very good flying instructor. And she must have a way to change the course. She was deliberately teasing everyone. Come, purser, I'll allow you to show off in front of me. Quickly tell me your story so that I can look at you with adoration. Third, everyone look at the remote control in my hand. I found it in Malahi's palm just now. He seems to have pressed the button. I'm guessing that this thing must be controlling a time bomb. So we don't have to worry about flying to Ioha or landing. In a few minutes it should explode. The purser tried hard to control her voice, trying to make herself appear calmer. But it was useless. As she spoke, she suddenly squatted down and burst into tears. When the purser cried, the others were not much better off. Suddenly there was a lot of wailing. No matter who it was, when they realized that they only had a few minutes left to live, they could not calm down. Even the most well-trained people could not do it. At that moment, Qin Guang felt as uncomfortable as if he had eaten a fly. He had entered the realm of life to ring the bell of destiny for the second time, and finally cursed the hijackers to death. But before he could close his mouth, he encountered another bomb. Wasn't this a little too much? Was he too fated with things that could explode in the past few days? A few days ago he met Nicosia Terpester. Okay, she was a walking self-destruct. But last night he encountered Hamid and the other 2 bombs. In the end he relied on Lioli and Popcorn 5S to survive. Why was he here again today? How tiring. I forget it. You can put your phone in the cup. At that moment, Lioli's voice finally sounded in his heart. It had only been a day, but when Qin Guang heard it, he felt as if it was the sound of nature. He was so moved that tears welled up in his eyes. Madame Lioli, I knew you wouldn't give up on me. Cut the crap. I don't have much time. Lioli's voice became softer and softer. Qin Guang had encountered situations one after another. She was the one who suffered. She forced Qin Guang to ring the bell of destiny to save himself, but she also left behind a bomb. There was nothing she could do. She had no choice but to exhaust herself. Lioli felt like she had become a sponge. There was always water in her stomach. It seemed like she had been squeezed dry, but if she twisted it hard, there would always be water. Poor Nicosia Terpester. She was drifting aimlessly in the pitch-black nothingness, feeling this life that was so long that it made people despair. She pondered over this strange way of living and searched for the true meaning of life. Before she could find an answer to these thousands of questions in her heart, she was grabbed by Lioli again. Do you want to understand the meaning of living? Lioli appeared in front of her once again. Okay, goddess. I know. Defusing a bomb, I know. Nicosia Terpester waved her hand impatiently. No, she might not even have a hand right now. She was just a soul drifting in the nothingness. Chapter 720. Outside, Qin Guang quietly placed his phone into the Holy Grail, then patted the purser's shoulder. Now let's discuss the flight route. You don't have to worry about the bomb. How is that possible, sir? I just used the mysterious power from the east. I already know where they hid the bomb. I'm going to find the bomb now and dismantle it. If you really don't want to die, then be more diligent. Ask the passengers if they know how to fly a plane. Desperate times called for desperate measures. Qin Guang was not interested in explaining to these people how he found the bomb. He just wanted them to know the result. Sir, is what you said true? This is impossible, right? Mr. Qin, we know you are comforting us. Thank you, you are a good person. However, you should go back to your seat and find a way to leave a will for your family. Obviously, no one really took Qin Guang's Eastern power seriously. Now was not the time to get excited. Otherwise, someone would have already started scolding him. Can't you see that we are so desperate that we want to kill ourselves? What kind of situation is this, and you still have the mysterious power? Do you think you are Iron Man, Stark, or Thor? At the last moment of her life, the purser was still hesitating. Should she tell the others about this? The passengers did have the right to know, but she did not know how long it would take for the bomb to explode. If she told the others about this, would it cause panic among the passengers? Would it make things worse? As for the mysterious power that Qingguang mentioned, she just treated it as a joke. At this time, the other people's reactions were similar to the purser's. The flight attendant who spoke a little more to Qingguang in the first-class cabin asked doubtfully, "Mr. Qin, can you really do it?" Qingguang smiled very handsomely and nodded. "Of course, no problem. Would I joke around with my life? Can you open the warehouse?" "Yes." "All right, come with me to the warehouse." After that, Qingguang led the flight attendant back to the first-class cabin. When he passed by Sun Xiaoxuan, he patted her shoulder and said, "Have a good sleep. When you wake up, we will be home safe and sound." Sun Xiaoxuan didn't know where Qingguang's confidence came from, but she had a blind, almost superstitious worship for Qingguang. She nodded heavily and said, "Yes." The other passengers in the cabin also came over, wanting to ask him about the situation. Qingguang was not in the mood to chat with these people. He just walked to the economy class at the back and said, "Everyone please make way. The crisis has been resolved. Everything is as usual." "Yes, that's right. Everyone please make way. We need to check the warehouse." The two of them came to the door of the warehouse and the flight attendant tried to enter the password. Fortunately, the robber, Murahi, had not changed the password of the warehouse. After entering the door, Qingguang went straight to a corner and opened the box that was blocking it. A small black leather suitcase was lying there quietly. "That's it." Qingguang swallowed his saliva. Although Lu Li had helped to prevent the bomb from exploding, such a big thing was enough to make one's hair stand on end just by looking at it. When Qingguang picked up the bag and unzipped it, revealing the timer and the bomb inside, the Pan Am flight attendant who came with him gasped and finally believed his words. "How on earth did you do it?" She almost thought that the bomb was planted by Qingguang. Otherwise, there was no way to explain why this person had the confidence to come straight here and take out such a terrifying thing. "How I did it is not important. Tell us how we should throw it out now. Now that there is an ocean below us, we can just throw it, right?" "Of course. But we have to call the purser over." The two of them waited for more than a minute, and the purser finally ran over, panting. She was a little incoherent. "Sir, oh Mr. Qin, you must have been sent by God to save us." Qingguang waved his hand impatiently. "Stop talking nonsense. There is only a minute left on the timer. If you dilly-dally any longer, we will really have to go see God together." Okay, sir. Follow me." 30 seconds later, Qingguang finally threw the unlucky bomb into the waste channel. Together with several flight attendants, they watched the black box fall straight down through the monitor. They breathed a long sigh of relief. They were safe for a short while. Everyone imitated his actions, patting their chests as if thanking the heavens and earth. "By the way, have you found anyone who can fly the plane? Also, what should we do about the flight route?" Qingguang did not forget that the poor plane was cruising automatically to Ioha at the moment. The purser's face turned pale. "I've asked all the passengers just now. No one knows how to fly the plane." "Well, forget it. Please give me 2 parachutes. Let's say goodbye here. It's better to miss each other than to see each other. We can still be friends in the next life." "Sir, we don't have parachutes." "What? Not even the flight crew?" "Yes, no. At our current altitude, it's the stratosphere outside. It's impossible to parachute. This is also a pressurized cabin. We really don't have the conditions for parachuting. The flight crew doesn't have parachutes either. Aviation ethics also don't allow the flight crew to have parachutes." "So, does that mean we're still doomed?" "In a sense, yes." "What the hell?" Qingguang cursed. Before he could finish cursing in his heart, Liuli looked as if she wanted to quit. "Shut up. I can't take it anymore. I really can't take it anymore. Good luck. Goodbye. Thank you. I'll die in front of you. Die. The sooner you die, the sooner you can reincarnate. The sooner you die, the sooner you can reincarnate." "I really can't do anything this time." After that, Liuli really didn't say anything. Qingguang was in a daze. He said to the flight attendants, "You guys try to find another way. If it really doesn't work, I'll do it." "But you don't know how to fly a plane, do you?" the purser said doubtfully. Qingguang didn't rush to answer her. Instead, he sank his mind into the world in the cup. He pinched his fingers and calculated. After the deering flower grew and bore deering fruit last time, the production of several world in the cup that had already been maxed out had increased again. It actually directly increased from 44,466 to 51,818. Now, the daily production of faith value had reached 300,000, and the production rate was about 12,600 per hour. After training the pectoral major until now, He had saved another 580,000 faith value. That was to say, as long as he waited for less than 2 hours, he would be able to gather enough faith value for a beggar version of the world in the cup for pilot special training. It was time to show his real skills. He suddenly felt confident and snorted. It doesn't matter whether I can fly a plane or not, but I'll be able to in a while. This lady, I'll emphasize for the last time. Don't doubt my ability. If I say I can do it, I can do it. Now you immediately find a way to change the route. Chapter 721. Didn't you hear what I said? Qin Guang glared angrily. He finally lost his temper after being questioned by the flight attendant woman again and again. At this point, the people on the plane had no other choice but to believe him. Well, Mr. Qin, it seems that we really have no other choice. Qin Guang shrugged. I hope to restore contact with the ground and let them remotely control the plane to land. I'm also afraid of death. If I had a choice, I wouldn't want to take on such a heavy responsibility. The so-called heroes were divided into 2 types. One was to become a hero for their beliefs and ideals, and the other was like Qin Guang, who was forced to do something beyond his abilities. Miss Sun, aren't you going to follow Mr. Qin? The young musician sitting in front of Qin Guang and Sun Xiaoxuan also noticed that something was wrong. Qin Guang seemed to have become the backbone of all the surviving staff on the plane unknowingly. Although the situation was getting better, it still seemed that danger was lurking everywhere. The flight attendants all looked solemn. At this point, he had forgotten that Qin Guang had looked down on Clayterman just now. He only treated the strongest man in the world as a superman. With such curiosity, he took the initiative to ask Sun Xiaoxuan, who had been sitting calmly in his seat. In his opinion, this girl was not an ordinary person. Although there was no large-scale commotion among the passengers in the first-class cabin at this time, whether it was the successful businessmen, the pot-bellied officials, or the fashionable and handsome celebrities, these people all had lingering expressions of anxiety on their faces. Only this girl that was with Qin Guang stood out from the rest. She looked like a student, but she wasn't afraid at all. Her calmness was simply admirable. Sun Xiaoxuan smiled. Why should I follow him? He's doing business. Aren't you afraid at all? The young musician widened his eyes in disbelief and asked. Sun Xiaoxuan tilted his head and looked at him in confusion. Why should I be afraid? Was there any use in being afraid? It wouldn't change the current situation. If I stuck to him like a dog's skin plaster, it would only bring him trouble and get in his way. Since he said that he would let me go back alive, I believe that he can do it. If it was someone else, they would definitely succumb to the fear in their heart when everyone was in such a desperate situation. They would only want to stay with the people closest to them. Even if they were to die, they wanted to die together. However, Sun Xiaoxuan was different. She knew what was right and what was wrong in this situation. She also knew that the best choice for her was to sit here and wait for Qin Guang to solve all the problems. Unless Qin Guang needed her help, she would stand up and do whatever Qin Guang needed her to do. She didn't realize how special she was, but the young musician in front of her did. No wonder you're friends with Mr. Qin. For some reason, he seemed to have been infected by Sun Xiaoxuan's words and gradually calmed down. Sun Xiaoxuan's mood seemed to have been influenced by him for some reason. Since I'm here, I'll take things as they come. Whether it's life or death, it's all fate. I'll just accept it. At this time, Qin Guang sat back down and chatted with Sun Xiaoxuan for a while before sitting alone in the cockpit. The beggar's version of the world in a cup would take at least an hour and 40 minutes. It was useless to be impatient now. He might as well take advantage of this time to learn more about piloting the plane from the purser. He would at least be able to recognize the functions of some buttons. As for the cruising route, he had already figured it out. When he learned how to pilot a plane, he might try to destroy the computer center and switch to manual mode. The problem of the automatic cruising route would naturally be solved. After all, this was a huge plane with a high level of modern technology. He didn't know how difficult it would be to pilot it in manual mode. After all, he was only one person. It was a bit difficult to think about it. Forget it. Don't worry about those details. I have to believe in the professionals of the world in a cup. When I master it, I will be the strongest in the world. My electric car will also be able to run like a Harley Davidson. A civil airliner will be a piece of cake. The other flight attendants began to walk around the cabin again. Compared with before, these flight attendants were much calmer and no longer panicked. They hoped to find a hacker among the passengers and try to crack the plane's built-in security system to change the cruising route. But they couldn't directly tell the seriousness of the situation. Even Qin Guang asked if there was a parachute on the plane. There must be many other passengers on the plane who had the same idea. In the claustrophobic cabin, facing a situation where they might not survive, the dark side of human nature was likely to be magnified infinitely in an instant. Maybe it only needed a small opportunity. Before, everyone thought they were going to die, so they might have been relatively casual when dealing with these things. But once there was a chance to survive, the flight attendants immediately became serious and professional. So they told a small lie when asking the passengers. They lied that Qin Guang had a very skilled pilot experience. With him in charge, the crisis had basically been completely resolved. Now they only needed a computer service staff to assist in the operation. The reason why Qin Guang didn't sit next to Sun Xiaoxuan in the first-class cabin but sat alone in the cockpit was to cooperate with the flight attendants' white lie. But unfortunately, until they finished asking the last passenger in the economy class, they still couldn't find an expert who could crack the route. The plane still flew straight to Ioha. "Mr. Qin, I'm sorry. There's really no one who can help." The chief flight attendant reported the news to Qin Guang in frustration. Qin Guang sighed and turned his head to look at the dense buttons and digital screens on the console. Well, what he had just learned was basically in vain. "I'm afraid I can only use manual mode? I'm afraid it's very difficult. According to our previous experience, manual mode is usually only used in very extreme situations. After all, at least 2 or 3 pilots are required to complete it. There are too many aspects to control on the plane." The chief flight attendant's tone became more and more dejected. The hope of survival that had gradually been ignited was gradually extinguished. She initially thought that Qin Guang had some foundation in flying. After all, his words of "don't doubt my ability" sounded domineering and powerful. In the end, that fellow nearly mistook the button to open the cabin door for ejection, which caused the chief flight attendant's mental breakdown. Does your civil aviation have ejection start? Well, maybe he really is a genius. After all, the director of the CIA also knows how to fly a plane. It's not impossible that the director of the Special Affairs Bureau of China is a monster. They are at the same level. But now he still needs to pilot it manually. Isn't that too much? Also, why did he insist on waiting for 2 hours? What's the principle behind it? I only know a very superficial thing. Can he learn to fly by lying in the pilot's chair and meditating like this? Isn't that ridiculous? At this moment, there was a sudden rustling sound from the communicator. After losing contact with the ground command for nearly half an hour, the passenger plane that had disappeared into thin air finally regained some contact with the human world. Not only were the people on the plane working hard, but the aviation command center on the ground was also trying everything possible to restore contact. They may have activated some kind of safety protection mechanism remotely, and they finally succeeded. Calling DL199333, calling DL199333, this is China Airlines Command Center. The chief flight attendant immediately picked up the communication, and Qin Guang also became alert. However, about 10 minutes later, everyone sighed. The situation did not seem to have improved much. It was nothing more than having one more person to chat with. Although the co-pilot did not completely destroy the communication system, he had completely cut off the remote control port. Even the backup port was not spared. At present, the only thing that could be connected was the emergency communicator, but it was useless. They could not change the course or take over the plane. Everyone, don't give up hope. We will do everything we can to save the lives of DL199333 and all the passengers on the plane. We also have the most professional pilots on standby. As long as you can completely follow our instructions during the landing, your chances of survival are very high. The voice of the middle-aged man on the communicator said some very meaningless words. Qin Guang curled his lips, thinking that it would be more useful to tell a joke to make me happy. The chief flight attendant also played along. "Thank you. If you can come up with any ideas, we will do our best to cooperate." "Okay, now the fuel on the plane can last for about 10 hours. You will arrive at the preset destination in about 7 hours, leaving us with plenty of time." The ground command center on the communicator got some good news from the plane. After all, Qin Guang was less than an hour and a half away from the next beggar's world in the cup. In the following period of time, the two sides maintained communication. As the new pilot who volunteered, Qin Guang was taught some basic flight knowledge through the communicator. The chief flight attendant cooperated with him the whole time. Although everyone felt that this was actually a meaningless struggle, who would want to give up until the last moment? "Anyway, I don't care what you do. Qin Guang must not die." At this time, in a large courtyard in Yanjing, several old men were glaring at the person in charge of Wuxia Airlines and roaring. This earth-shattering event finally reached the ears of this group of old men. At that time they were so scared that they jumped out of their chairs. They temporarily interrupted the large-scale meeting and focused on investigating this matter. The one who made this roar was Old Man Jiang. His fists were clenched tightly, and the veins on his forehead were popping. The other old men's faces were also extremely ugly. No one even dared to look at Old Man Jin's face. Chapter 722. Everyone knew that Grandfather Jin's granddaughter was tied to Qin Guang. Although Jin Shiyue had a gentle personality, she was famous for being soft on the outside but tough on the inside. If Qin Guang died, the consequences would be unthinkable. Of course, what everyone was most concerned about was the one family's leader's opinion on this matter. All along, the two sides rarely communicated directly. Many things were maintained through Qin Guang as a link. The person who made one family's leader willing to side with the ruler was Qin Guang, the director of the Special Affairs Bureau. Otherwise, with the strength she displayed that day, even the new weapons might not be a threat to her. Without enough restraint and reason, why would she be willing to give up her privileges and let others control her? On their plane, is there really not a single pilot with experience? He had scolded them, but it was useless. The old man in the middle slowed down his tone and asked the person in charge of China Airlines again. The China Airlines representative on the screen confirmed with the staff next to him and helplessly replied, "Indeed, there is not a single pilot. Now Director Qin is undergoing emergency training. We can only hope that he can learn and apply what he has learned." How is that possible? Nonsense. Even if he is a civil aviation pilot without a long period of systematic training, it is impossible to complete a flight mission. What's more, the automatic control system on DL199333 is damaged. There is no ground crew to provide positioning and technical support. This is too difficult. Old Man Jean slammed the table and stomped his feet. The China Airlines representative nodded. This is not the worst situation. In fact, the plane's preset flight route is directly to a place called Ioha. That should be the terrorist organization's base. If we want to change the course, we can only switch the plane to manual operation mode. Only a half-baked pilot, who was learning and applying what he had learned, and it had to be manual operation. The old men were silent for a moment. No matter how they thought about it, it was a scam. No one wanted to admit it, but in their hearts they were all thinking the same thing. This time it was really over. First, help us connect the communication. We want to talk to Qin Guang. The atmosphere in the conference room was extremely tense. The old man in the middle said so. On the other side, Qin Guang was almost dizzy from the cramming method of the flight instructor in the command center. There were so many instruments and the other party could not wait to explain 3 or 4 per second. It would be a miracle if he could remember them all. When he heard that the elders wanted to talk to him, he quickly nodded and asked them to switch. "Brother, although you have good intentions, you speak too fast. There are too many things that I need to remember and I don't have the ability to do that right now." The moment the communication was connected, old Zhang's voice came. "Little Qin, stay strong." "Okay, thank you. I've always been strong. Believe me, you can do it." This was old Jin's encouragement. Sure, no problem." Qin Guang acknowledged. After exchanging a few words, Qin Guang was almost convinced by the old men. He was calm, but the old men's tone was sorrowful. "How are you guys consoling me? You're clearly sending me on my way. Aren't you trying to comfort me? You're clearly sending me on my way. Well, actually, things might not be that bad. Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine." Qin Guang said tentatively. The old men were moved to tears. This young man was too strong, too great, too brave. In this world, he was probably the only one who could still be so calm in such a desperate situation. Qin Guang. Good job, young man. A real man should live as a hero and die as a hero. No matter what, we will take care of your family. Qin Guang, although it's good to be strong now that things have come to this, we have to prepare for the worst. Tell us if you have any unresolved thoughts in your heart. Don't worry, we're not asking you to say your last words. Well, it's better to be safe than sorry. The old man in the middle rarely made promises, but now that things had come to this, he felt that he needed to make more promises to Qin Guang. Old man Jin also said, "Qin Guang, I've always treated you as my grandson-in-law. No matter what, from now on your family is also my family. I won't guarantee them a lifetime of glory and wealth, but peace and happiness will definitely not be a problem. Hey, old gentleman, which eye of yours saw that I've already ascended to heaven? You keep saying that it's not my last words, but why do I feel like something is wrong? Right, we've contacted sect leader Wen. Do you have anything else to say to her? At this moment, one of the old men in charge of communicating with the Special Affairs Bureau suddenly interrupted. The old men's intentions were clear to have Chen Guang talk to Wen at this time. They hoped that Chen Guang could at least stabilize sect leader Wen in the final moments of his life. The big picture was the most important. Although this was a very mundane way of thinking, this matter was of utmost importance. Alright, help me get through to her. But things really aren't that bad, old man. Although his heart was aching, he actually wanted to know what Wen would say to him in this situation. She would probably be scared half to death? Alright, this was actually quite interesting. Chen Guang knew what the old men were thinking, but he wasn't bothered by it. He immediately agreed to it and even comforted the old men in the process. Strong young man, you don't have to comfort us. We should be the ones comforting you. Then we'll first contact the 2 deputy directors of the Special Affairs Bureau of the 5 capitals. They'll be in charge of contacting sect leader Wen. Xan Qin and Wu Miaowan's soft sobbing could be heard from the communicator. Alright, those 2 girls also know about this. Brothers, in another hour or so, the new and hottest strongest pilot will be born. Don't make it seem like we're going to be separated forever. As the old men spoke, Xan Qin's scream suddenly came from the other end. Bastard director. How could you do this? How could you leave me and little Miao Miao alone without saying a word? I haven't even learned the painting scroll, and I don't even understand what's going on with your bone structure. You bastard. You irresponsible bastard. Well, he did not hear Wen's voice, but was scolded by Xan Qin first. Hey, calm down. Calm down. I'm not dead yet, right? I'm still flying in the sky, aren't I? Don't quibble, don't comfort us, I know all about it. You're dead. Wu Miaowan's voice came from the side again. To be honest, those who know will think that you're comforting me, but those who don't know will think that you're cursing me. The old men in Yanjing listened and did not know whether to laugh or cry at Wu Miaowan's words. Were they really on the same side? Chen Guang did not even bother to roll his eyes. What kind of stinky mouth did these 2 girls have? Don't worry, although the situation looks terrible now, the plane is cruising on autopilot, and it didn't explode. It's just a small matter, a small matter. It's just piloting a plane, what's the big deal? As soon as he finished speaking, the plane suddenly shook, and the alarm suddenly sounded in the cockpit. Chen Guang and the flight attendants swayed violently, and they almost fell to the ground. *CK, is my mouth blessed or something? 10 seconds later, listening to the buzzing alarm in his ears, Master Guang looked at the shocking pile of red exclamation marks on the surveillance equipment that he could not understand, and felt a little uncomfortable. At this moment, the China Airlines person in charge's voice interrupted again. The plane must have encountered an extreme cold wave just now, and the right wing engine must have suffered a certain impact. And then? Chen Guang, the old men, and Xan Qin asked in unison. The China Airlines person in charge swallowed his saliva. The power has been damaged, and the autopilot has automatically increased its power to maintain speed and balance. The fuel consumption has increased, and with the plane's current fuel capacity, it can only hold on for another 3 to 4 hours before reaching Ioha. Of course, this is still a better situation. The right-wing engine also has the possibility of overloading and stopping at any time. The power parameters of the Canadian-made engine are. Wait, what you said is too professional, I don't quite understand. Make it simple, make it simple. To put it simply, the plane can lose an engine at any time and then lose balance, stalling, and crash. It can also crash after 3 hours of fuel exhaustion. The China Airlines person in charge said dejectedly. Then what should we do now? Immediately switch to manual mode, and then make an emergency landing. Chen Guang spread his hands. Save it. With my current standard, do you think I can make an emergency landing? Even if you give me the widest and largest runway, I can still crash into the ground. Do you believe me? No matter what, wait for me for an hour and a half. Also, it's the sea below us. Make an emergency landing? Does this plane have a gliding function? At this moment, everyone fell into silence. What Chen Guang said was correct, and the situation had truly worsened. At this moment, there was a commotion in the passenger cabin. Finally, someone could not sit still and ran over to see the situation. Chen Guang had no choice but to stand up with a straight face. Get out, get out. Just sit there obediently. Don't cause trouble. Sir, what was that vibration just now? I accidentally stepped on the brakes just now to test the performance. Huh? Brakes? Brake. Alright. Get out, get out. As Chen Guang spoke, he slammed the cockpit door shut. He was also upset. When it rains, it pours. When one is unlucky they can't even drink water. The flight attendants in the cockpit cried again. All of you get out too. All of you get out. I'm so annoyed. Chen Guang chased all the flight attendants out, leaving only the chief flight attendant who had not cried yet to help out. After a long time, old Master Jin's voice came again. This time it was even sadder than before. The old master, who was used to all kinds of storms, actually had a sobbing tone. Little Chen, you have to be strong. In everyone's hearts, Chen Guang and the rest of the plane had officially entered a 3-hour death countdown. The atmosphere became more and more depressing and heavy. Everyone could not help but try to figure out what Chen Guang and the rest were feeling at this moment. How desperate and sad were they? Chapter 723. At this moment, Xan Qin suddenly shouted again without any rhyme or reason. Chief, hurry up and rub it. Chen Guang thought he had misheard. The old men did not react in time. After all, rub was a term used on the internet. The old men did not understand it very well. What did you just say? Chen Guang asked again. Xan Qin took a deep breath and shouted at the top of her lungs, Come. Rub. Are you crazy? Look at the situation now. Stop messing around. Chen Guang roared back with an even louder voice than her. Considering the identities of the participants, this might be the highest level conference in the country. With such a solemn occasion and tense atmosphere, can't you see that the elders are on the verge of tears? Can't you be more serious? I'm serious. Hurry up and put it in a bottle. It's best to throw it into the sea in a low-temperature insulated box. I'll set off now. I'll definitely find your bottle in the sea. Then I'll give you a child. Motherf asterisk cur. I want it too. Wu Miaowan said again. The old men are all listening. I have a clean relationship with you all. Don't make it sound like we're in a relationship. Don't cause trouble. When Chen Guang thought about how even old man Jin was listening to them, he was nearly driven insane by these two lolas. So awkward. No. Listen to me. I'm not talking nonsense. Chief, don't you realize how terrifying your talent is? Do you know how precious and rare a talent like yours is under the circumstances that you don't have to consider your comprehension ability? I watched the live broadcast of your match in Detroit. Don't you know how precious your arms are? That's right. Our chief is simply a weirdo in the history of human evolution. Every gene is a treasure. It's a disaster for mankind to burn them to ashes in the air crash. Wu Miaowan chimed in. Then she seemed to be talking to herself. I'm also a genius. If I can combine the chief's genes, how talented will the child be? Chief, don't give up on yourself. Hurry up and do it. For all of mankind. Chen Guang silently covered his face as he listened to the two kids, talking nonsense. He did not even have the strength to complain. Unexpectedly, after the initial awkwardness and bewilderment, the elders finally understood the meaning of the two little lolas, and actually agreed with them. Chen Guang's victory in Detroit naturally attracted the attention of not only America's Special Department, but China also had their own thoughts. It's just that due to various reasons and Sect Master Wen's mood, it wasn't convenient for them to bring it up. Then again, Chen Guang was someone on their side to begin with, so there's no rush in this matter. When the time comes, it's not impossible for him to mention it. But now, his plane crash was imminent, and he only had a little more than 3 hours to live. In that case, the problem that the two little girls, who were martial arts practitioners, considered was indeed not to be taken lightly, even though the landing point was very strange. These two deputy chiefs of the Guang were talents. The younger generation will surpass the older. Little Chin, Little Xin and the others are right. There are 3 ways to be unfilial, and having no descendants is the worst. If it's really possible, try it. This may be too much for the two little girls, but we will think of another way for you. Old Master Jean, you're also doing this. I will ask Shirua. If she agrees, are you crazy? Shut up. I don't want to talk to you. Please help me get one. Can't I? Xan Qin and the old men said in the same regretful tone. Nonsense. Old Master, you were also led into the ditch by them, right? Can you be more serious? Can you let me say my last words properly? Okay. After a few seconds of silence, when Wen's voice finally came, Qin Guang, if you die, I will kill all the people who directly or indirectly caused your death. I will help you keep an eye on your uncle and aunt. Okay, thank you. Also, hurry up and do it. It was obvious that Wen had been listening for a long time. Her first sentence was concise and comprehensive, going straight to the point. Are you crazy? If it wasn't for the fact that this was an emergency call, Qin Guang would have hung up on the phone. This is life and death, can you please be more serious? Okay, I'll be serious. Please listen to me. I want to give birth to a child for you. You know me, no one else will be interested in me. I can't just live like this for the rest of my life. If you die, then forget it. Please leave something behind so that I can think of something. I won't die. I really won't die. I really have a way. But I really don't know how to explain it to you. Forget it. Anyway, I'm a righteous person. That's it. I'm hanging up. After a long time, Qin Guang turned to look at the purser and said in English, "How do we cut this thing off? Can we still connect it if we cut it off?" "Mr. Qin, please don't. This is our only way to communicate with the outside world." The purser quickly tried to dissuade him. "All right, then let's continue like this. Now, I have to close my eyes and meditate. None of you believe me, but you can't go wrong by listening to me. I'll show you later that I'll become an ace pilot." After saying that, Qin Guang picked up his sleeves and ran to the side to find a small bed to lie down on. If he continued to sit in front of the communicator, he would either be force-fed, or he would be asked for essence. That was just too crazy. At this critical moment, he wasn't afraid of being rude in front of the elders. Anyway, in their hearts he was already a dead man. What's wrong with me being a little arrogant? In the end, Qin Guang was forced to lie down and act shamelessly. The other side only allowed him and the purser to listen in on a high-level meeting. The general meaning was that Wenwen and the elders had promised to uphold peace and hoped that martial artists and ordinary people could live in harmony. This was what Qin Guang had always wanted. Even if something happened to Qin Guang, she was willing to maintain the current situation and work together to change things in a better direction. However, she wasn't completely unconditional. In general, she wanted Qin Guang's funeral to be of the highest standard. She also wanted Qin Guang's family to do whatever they wanted. Hearing this group of people discussing his funeral so happily, Master Guang gritted his teeth as he lay on the bed. However, he didn't really lie down for long before someone shouted at him to get off the bed. The command center quickly took over the call, and the intense last-minute force-feeding began again. At this moment, Qin Guang didn't want to listen to them for even a second. However, he had no choice. Everyone was depending on him, and he had no choice but to put on an act. Thus, he could only mutter to his communicator to express that he was listening. After waiting for about half an hour, Wenwen and the others' meeting finally ended. Although Wenwen felt terrible, she wasn't a sloppy person. She ended the call after finalizing the matter. Perhaps she was already busy avenging Qin Guang. "I say bro, take a break. Really, take a break. I feel like your throat is on fire when I listen to your voice over the phone. I really can't remember such complicated things in a short time. Listen to me. You must remember the key points. Once we get close to land, try to switch to manual mode and then try to change direction. We can roughly capture your position and movement route now. Thanks to the Big Dipper system, I'll try my best to cooperate with you and guide you to the nearest airport. When the time comes, you'll circle in the air. We'll think of a way to slowly bring the plane down. Okay. Reduce the power when you land. Don't rush it. Pull the nose up. Chief Qin? Where are you, Chief Qin? Sorry, I fell asleep. Chief Qin, be serious." At this moment, a crisp voice suddenly came from the communicator. Qin Guang, are you okay? How are you? Well, this was Jin Shiriyue. How did she know? I'm fine. My emotions are very stable. I'm trying to save myself. Qin Guang listened to her sobbing tone and felt his heart ache. He was really ashamed. The situation was not as bad as you think. As long as the engine didn't blow up. No, for an ace pilot, even if one engine blew up, they would still be able to glide and land. I know. I won't waste your time. I just want to tell you that I love you. You must survive. Jin Shiriyue only said one sentence. After all, she was a girl who knew the big picture. At such a special time, she was already completely satisfied that she could use her status and privilege to fight for the opportunity to say such a sentence. Thank you. I know. I won't die. Regarding the matter of Jin Shiriyue taking the initiative to pursue him, Qin Guang was actually deliberately avoiding it. After all, it wasn't easy to get rid of such a big scandal target. It was quite hard for him to live with the identity of Jin Shiriyue's boyfriend. But now he would respond to her a little. Anyway, in everyone's heart, his current situation was too miserable and terrible. Unexpectedly, just as Jin Shiriyue's voice disappeared, Jiang Yage continued. Qin Guang. You know what I'm thinking. I'm warning you, you can't die. Otherwise, I'll tell everyone in the world about it. You have to live well for me. The matter she was talking about should be referring to the time when she saw Qin Guang dressed as Qin Yu in Yan Jing's Inua club. Qin Guang pressed his forehead and said weakly, all right. I already said I won't die. Sister Shuriwei and I will wait for you to come back together. As long as you can come back alive, you can do whatever you want. You understand? After Jiang Yage finished speaking, she fell silent. In the eyes of others, Qin Guang must be racing against time. The old men looked at each other, especially Old Master Jin and Old Master Jiang. They felt that something was wrong. Could it be that Yage also likes him? Old Master Jin said doubtfully. Old Master Jiang smacked his lips. Seems so? I watched her grow up, but I've never seen her speak to anyone in such a tone. Old Master Jin didn't point out one thing. After all, when Jiang Yage said, you can do whatever you want in front of everyone, the ambiguity was too deep. As old people, it was a little difficult for them to get used to it. Well, little Qin, as long as you can come back safely, we won't interfere in the affairs of you young people. Qin Guang, who was dealing with the command center, glared at him. Old man, you guys are really working hard to stimulate my potential. Well, Jiang Yage and I, it's okay, we don't blame you. Old Master Jiang interrupted him. Okay, let's not talk about it anymore. Hurry up and do the assault training. It's up to you. Qin Guang had no choice but to say, okay. Finally, after more than an hour of dawdling, when his brain was about to explode from the extremely enthusiastic instructors in the command center, he finally picked up his cup. It doesn't seem to be filled with water. Forget it, I'm learning to fly a plane anyway, it's better to leave it empty. I just don't know what the beggar version of pilot training will be like. Forget it, I'll deal with whatever comes my way anyway. Now that things have come to this, there's nothing to ask for. He focused his mind and sank into it. Liuli was still sitting without any movement, but Qin Guang already had the experience of mobilizing the realm of life on his own. The move looked a little shameful and out of place, but it should be quite useful. He clenched his fists, curled up his body tightly, and then suddenly raised his arms and shouted, come on! Holy Grail! I want to learn to fly a plane. His roar echoed repeatedly in Cloud City, sounding soul-stirring and awe-inspiring. After waiting for several minutes, there was no movement. Maybe the posture was wrong, or maybe the momentum was not enough, so he did it again. Puff. Liuli, who was meditating with her eyes closed, was finally amused by his simple and honest look. If you want to tell me that you are acting cute, then let me tell you, you have succeeded. Hey, don't make fun of me. I'm very anxious now. Since you are awake, help me. Liuli blinked and didn't talk nonsense. She raised her hand and Qin Guang's body floated up again. Qin Guang, who slowly disappeared in Cloud City, didn't notice that after he left, Liuli's figure suddenly became a little fainter. Sister Liuli, you worked too hard. Lu Mingwa said with a heartache. Liuli smiled. I can't help it. Who asked me to meet him? Maybe after he withstood this for a while, I really need to have a good rest. Let's wait a little longer. When the Holy Grail is upgraded to another level and reaches the 3rd level, Cloud Elephant Sky, our situation will be much better. Lu Mingwa sighed. On Qin Guang's side, he thought that he would be trapped in the armor like many times before, or he would be like the racing god training ground with only half an alto. However, after transforming in the world in the cup, he immediately found that this was not the case. As far as the eye could see, it was an endless starry sky, and the music he was familiar with rang in his ears. If he remembered correctly, it was probably the FC game he played when he was a primary school student more than 10 years ago. Little B? The more he looked at the starry sky, the more he felt that this was not a real starry sky but an 8-bit FC game. He wanted to look at his hand. Well, my hand has become a pillar. Now I am sitting in a mosaic small plane in Little B, right? No wonder it was the beggar version. This low-quality, low-sound, low-standard flying shooting game was really simple. At least give me Saruman Snake or Thunderbolt. Chapter 724. In the past, Qin Guang felt that half an alto was already the pinnacle of a small sparrow in a cup, but it had all the essentials. After all, although the interior of the unlucky alto was covered in mosaics, the soundtrack was retarded, and the road outside was even worse. The feel and control of the entire car was no different from a real car. This was not something that could be easily achieved. But today he found that he still underestimated the wit of the world in the cup. It was really scary, the mosaic of himself, the mosaic of the Little B plane. The instrument in front of him was completely the lowest end of the 8-bit game, but looking at it, the instrument was so complete. The feeling of flying was so real. No, these instruments seemed to be completely different from the civil aviation plane just now. and the cockpit was also very narrow. Could it be that this was a terrifying fighter plane? Just as he was thinking, the super simple electronic sound from the world in the cup finally came. First lesson of beginner flight tutorial. Chen Guang quickly raised his spirits and concentrated. He thought that this first lesson should let him familiarize himself with the performance of the fighter plane. More importantly, he should recognize the meaning of these instruments and how to use them, right? Please, Redeemer, eliminate the 50 green bees in front of you in 10 minutes. What the F***? CK. The first lesson of your beginner flight tutorial is 1 against 50. Are you crazy? Can you tell me how to fly the plane first? As he was cursing in his heart, the green dots floating in the distant starry sky suddenly moved, making a buzzing sound and rushed in the direction of Chen Guang. Even though he was now a mosaic of a person sitting in the plane, the sound made by the 50 little bees in front of him was deafening. Seeing these damn things flying closer and closer, the new pilot Chen Guang was still in a daze. The result was, of course, no suspense. The green bees hit his mosaic plane and exploded with a bang. He said he was going to die without any hesitation. But perhaps because his whole body was turned into a mosaic, he almost didn't feel any pain when he was killed. It was really no different from playing a game. In addition, he also learned something that he didn't know, whether it was good or bad news. This time, the world in the cup actually had no resurrection limit. He could die as many times as he wanted to. Just thinking about it made him feel blessed. There was no risk of failing the mission at all. But after his resurrection, he quickly shed 2 lines of sad mosaic tears. This was a basket of good news. Didn't this mean that he would die very, very miserably? Beginner tutorial lesson 1, second time. It even counted. Finally, after being hit 17 or 18 times in a row, Chen Guang managed to get Mosaic's plane to move a little before it was hit. But it was of no use. The evil green bee turned around and accurately crashed into him. Beginner's tutorial, lesson 1, time 9837. Driving the mosaic plane nimbly through the green bees, he pressed the shooting button from time to time, letting the bayu on the tip of the red tip of the mosaic plane emit an electronic light, accurately hitting the last green bee. He finally completed the first lesson of the honey juice beginner tutorial. Is it finally the second lesson? Elementary flight tutorial, lesson 1, section 2. Did the jungler have to be so meticulous? There was still a second lesson in the first lesson. Please, Redeemer, eliminate the 55 green bees in front of you in 9 minutes. Next, 60 small bees were eliminated in 8 minutes. Until the final 120 small bees were eliminated in 1 minute, he finally completed the rather painful first lesson of the beginner tutorial. Please eliminate 120 green bees and 10 purple bees in 1 minute. You are so boring. What was normal pilot training like? Chen Guang had no idea. He also felt that what he was practicing now was definitely a super unreasonable wild way, but life was like this. Since he couldn't resist, he closed his eyes and enjoyed it. Although he seemed to be in the starry sky at this time, the feeling of flying the mosaic plane was really no different from piloting a fighter plane in the Earth's atmosphere. He didn't know what model the mosaic plane he was piloting at this time was, but there was no doubt that it was a very low-end thing. After all, the electronic equipment of this plane was too retarded. Whether it was pulling up or changing directions or even any small movements, it all required him to manually operate. Fortunately, the rich piloting experience from the Racing God training ground, coupled with the Kirin arms and Aeolus legs, gave him super flexible and super useful limbs. It was very difficult to fly and shoot alone in the plane at the same time, but he slowly got used to it. The amazing thing was that although his hand looked like a fire stick, he could still feel the feeling of his 5 fingers touching the instrument when he was operating the instrument. The level of the small bees was getting higher and higher, from green to purple to red, and then gradually turned into the queen bee. The flying of the enemy bees was getting more and more flexible, and the attack method also changed from a simple collision to a crossfire line, or a high-speed collision, or the even more terrifying formation attack. He really didn't know how long it had been, at least a few years, but the beginner tutorial was finally over. The little mosaic figure in Mosaic's cockpit was so touched that it shed a mosaic tear. Advanced Flight Tutorial Lesson 1. Damn it, are you done? What the hell is an advanced version? Is it even beginner? Well, compared to the last time, it seemed that the instruments in the cockpit were not the same. The number and type of instruments had increased, but the control had become a little easier. It seemed that with the upgrade of the beginner tutorial, the plane had also been upgraded from a suspected World War I model to a World War II model. After the performance improvement of the plane, The biggest change brought to Qinguang was the load on the body during high-speed movements. Flying a plane was driving, and driving a car was also driving. On the surface it looked like driving a vehicle, but in fact, there was an essential difference between the two. A car would hardly disintegrate during a big maneuver, but it was different for a plane, especially a fighter plane. In the process of an intense firefight, it often had to make a variety of high-power and high-load maneuvers, such as sudden changes in direction, immense somersaults, vertical turns, Dutch rolls, and other difficult movements. If the intensity of these movements exceeded the endurance of the plane itself, it was even possible for the plane to disintegrate while flying. In addition, when a high-speed fighter plane engaged in an intense fight in the air, every big maneuver would cause an extremely terrifying load on the body of the fighter plane pilot. For example, black vision. When the fighter plane rapidly increased its G value, gravity would pull the human body's blood down, and the human body would continue to rush up along with the plane. This would cause the brain to be short of blood, and the vision would turn black and nothing could be seen. This was actually a sign of fainting. Conversely, there would also be a situation where a large amount of blood would flow into the pilot's head, and the pilot's eyeballs might even be squeezed out of their eye sockets, or cause intracranial hemorrhage. Every step of piloting a fighter plane was dangerous. First of all, a top-notch pilot must have a very good physical fitness, which could also be understood as acceleration endurance. Second, the pilot must have an accurate judgment of the limits of the plane and the pilot's own endurance. In a dogfight, the one who could maximize the performance of their own fighter plane, whose tactical strategy was the most correct, whose judgment was the most accurate, and who could survive to the end. True ace pilots, in addition to diligently studying and training, were all talented people. Because of their innate advantages, they could always touch the limits of the fighter plane in their own body. In an intense firefight where life and death was only a hair's breadth away, they could always laugh to the end. For example, Richard Bond had piloted the same type of fighter plane as others, but he participated in hundreds of aerial battles in World War II and survived, and in the end he shot down 27 enemy planes. Another ace pilot, the father of Soviet aerial combat, Pokrishkin, had shot down as many as 59 planes. Such a great disparity in results was precisely because of the unique talents of these ace pilots. They had a strong physique and an incomparably calm mentality. They could always use the shortest time to come up with the most correct strategy. Compared to ordinary pilots, their advantages were almost overwhelming. However, after going through the first stage of basic training, Qinguang already had all of these elements. Although the special training for his entire body had not been completed, his physique had long since surpassed the scope of ordinary people. As for his psychological quality and judgment, after dying countless times, even the weakest person should have trained it, not to mention that his psychological quality was not bad to begin with. In fact, it was super strong. The more one died, the less one was afraid. Something like judgment, to put it bluntly, was more of an accumulation of experience. The difference was that other pilots wanted to accumulate experience and had to fight with their lives. If they died, they could only wait for their next life to be reincarnated, but Master Guang said, "I have unlimited life." Although his opponent was Little B and did not look very serious, the graphics were also very crazy, and the accompaniment of the FC minigame was also very out of tune, but the greatest characteristic of the Heavenly Holy Grail was that no matter how much other aspects were reduced, the content related to special training would never be reduced. The control of this fighter plane was completely realistic. In the intense flight movements, the test of the performance of the fighter plane and the human body was also completely realistic. Even the feeling of the plane disintegrating due to excessive movements was completely realistic. As he flew, he felt like he was flying outside, his knees facing the breeze. It was simply refreshing. After switching to the World War II model, although the control had become simpler, the burden on the body was greater. However, as time passed, it seemed that his body's adaptability had gradually increased, and his acceleration endurance slowly increased through continuous flight. Finally, he waited for the new electronic notification from the Heavenly Holy Grail. Advanced version of basic flight tutorial, first lesson. Alright, you win. After the advanced version came the advanced version. When would there be an intermediate version? Would there be an advanced version? Wait, the cockpit seemed to have become bigger? He looked carefully at the instrument, and then tried to switch to manual mode to move the plane. Alright, this time even the model had been changed to become a bomber. There was actually no buy-a gun. Only airdrop bombs could be used to blow up little bees? Are you toxic? Isn't this game too difficult? Alright, I actually completed it again? I'm such a genius. Advanced version of basic flight tutorial, first lesson. You're already in the advanced version and you're still in the basic version. Are you crazy? Airbus A330-200? Switch to a modern model and it's a passenger plane. Isn't this the one outside now? What a considerate world in the cup. You want me to pilot a passenger plane to deal with those little bees in front of me? No weapons. I can only use the two wing blades that inexplicably grew out of the edges of the wings to cut them? You want me to pilot the plane as a Guan Yu? I actually did it. I'm such a genius. Qin Guang sat silently in the cockpit. Piloting such a large passenger plane in manual mode alone was simply insane. Even the supposedly tireless world in the cup made him unbearably tired. After successfully completing the advanced version, he didn't have the mood to be happy. Who knew what version of the basic version would be next? As for how long he had been piloting, he couldn't be bothered to calculate. At least a few hundred years in this world in the cup. Time was not even considered as time. Fortunately, his mind was protected by the power of the Holy Grail, or else only God knows how many times he would have gone crazy. When is this unlucky basic version ending? While he was complaining in his mind, his body suddenly trembled, the entire FC Little B starry sky quickly disintegrated, the A330 mosaic cockpit beside him also slowly turned into specks of stars and dissipated into the void. Is it finally going to end? Qin Guang looked at the endless void and thought so in his mind. Congratulations, Redeemer, you have completed the entire flying tutorial. After all this time, the basic version was all special flying training. Holy Grail, you liar. Next, please accept your graduation exam, Real Aerial Combat. As the voice faded, Qin Guang's vision blurred, he appeared in a completely black and white world. There was a buzzing sound in his ears, it was the roar of the engine. The glass cockpit soundproofing was really not good. Even if his head was wrapped in a pilot's helmet, it still made a buzzing sound. Raising his head, Qin Guang looked around and gave full marks for the picture quality of the graduation exam. Although it was black and white, everything before him looked extremely realistic. It's just that there was a hazy feeling to it. Looking at the instrument, he should be piloting a very outdated small model. What kind of model is this? Where am I going now? What am I doing now? In this black and white world. Just as he was thinking about this, a large pile of information was suddenly shoved into his brain. It actually included all the aircraft models that had appeared in modern society from the day of the birth of the aircraft. From the functional parameters to the meaning of the control instruments, to the weapon loading, everything was there. The huge amount of knowledge was strangely forced into his brain by the Holy Grail. There was no difficulty in the technical aspect. All he had to do was memorize it. The Holy Grail was also lazy, it just made his brain swell and hurt badly. After a few minutes, he slowly came back to his senses, and once again dug his brain to search for memories. These memories that originally did not belong to him, it was not very convenient to mobilize them. He could not achieve what he thought, he had no choice but to search bit by bit. After a long time he finally confirmed his model, the Soviet-made Polikarpov IL-15 fighter, a training plane that was rarely used in the country during World War II. He thought of a story. Could it be, please eliminate the 32 Type 97 heavy bombers in front? It's for real. It's really like this. My students have all died in battle, now it's time for me, the teacher, to go up. This sentence emerged in Qin Guang's heart. That's right, the current him, after all his own fighter planes were shot down by the enemy in 5 battles, he piloted a training plane alone on the 24th of July 1940, and took off from Wujing to meet the enemy's 32 heavy bombers. A real historical aerial battle. 1v32. Huge difference in model. Every enemy plane had 6 self-defense machine guns on it. There was a total of at least 160 self-defense machine guns. The backward Polikarpov IL-15 could only carry 2 light machine guns. This was not a small B fight. This was a real aerial battle. The Holy Grail used the black and white scenes in the documentary that Qin Guang had watched some time ago as a basis. It completely replicated this aerial battle that was enough to be recorded in the annals of human history using a black and white world. At that time, the highly skilled instructor with the surname Li took off with the determination to die. Although because of his outdated equipment, he was unable to shoot down the enemy plane even after he had used up all his bullets, and in the end he had helplessly retreated, but he also created history. But now, the Holy Grail's requirement for Qin Guang was that he must shoot down all the enemy planes under the exact same combat conditions. Chapter 725. Did he have to go so far? 1 against 32 in a real aerial battle? Lord Guang expressed that the pressure was a little too much. Instructor Li was able to weave in and out of 32 enemy planes, entering and exiting 3 times without shooting down a single enemy plane. That was enough to go down in history. He was facing 160 self-defense machine guns. In that era when aircraft performance was relatively backward, it was practically an inescapable net with no chance of survival. In addition, it was extremely difficult for Chen Guang to shoot down the enemy planes. As a large bomber at that time, be it its size, weapon load, or even the degree of armor, it far exceeded the I-15's firepower. The shabby I-15 only had machine guns and no cannons. In real history, Instructor Lee sent parts of the enemy planes flying into the sky, but he still could not shoot down a single enemy plane. In the end, he even tried to directly crash into the enemy plane that was drifting outside the formation with 2 reporters on board. It was not difficult to imagine how determined he was at that time as he tried to perish together with the enemy. However, the enemy plane pilot was equally skilled and managed to turn in time to avoid his crash. When he first saw this documentary on the internet, Chen Guang had high respect for this pilot who had taken off to face the enemy plane with the determination to die. However, he did not expect that not long after, he would personally play the role of Instructor Lee in the World Cup and have to complete the impossible mission that he had failed to complete. Perhaps, the reason why the Heavenly Holy Grail had recreated this period of history in a black and white world was because he had seen the documentary before. This seemed to have been preordained. Forget it. Since he was already here, he might as well take things as they came. Theoretically speaking, since he could accomplish the feat of killing bees with the wings of a large passenger plane in the FC world of the Little Bee, he could also do it in a real aerial battle. Although the sense of control in the black and white world was almost exactly the same as the Mosaic FC world of the Little Bee, the more realistic black and white scene, coupled with the heavy historical background of this matter, still gave him more pressure. However, he quickly adjusted his mood. Since there was this opportunity, he would try to complete the unfinished task of the martyrs in his world. He first closed his eyes tightly, then opened them abruptly. Chen Guang stretched out his hands and performed a series of rapid maneuvers that dazzled even his own eyes. The plane abruptly sped up and swooped forward. In the distance, densely packed black dots had already appeared on the horizon. It was the triangular formation formed by 31 planes and the other 97 heavy bomb that played the role of a reporter on the flank. Chen Guang's breathing gradually became heavy. He still remembered that when he first saw this precious historical material, the 4 guys in the dormitory almost burst into tears. They put themselves in his shoes. In the vast Huaxiao, the Air Force had almost been wiped out in the crossfire with the enemy. 5 fierce air battles had broken out in the sky above the 5 capitals. Almost all of the pilots who had died were students he had been with day and night. After confirming that there was no longer a fighter plane that could take off, the enemy sent 32 heavy bombers at once with a swaggering mood, ready to stab the devastated city with another knife. At this time, the instructor surnamed Lee climbed onto the backward training plane, took off alone with only 2 machine guns. What kind of mood did he have when he set off? What kind of decisiveness, what kind of courage to die? From the moment the engine was ignited at the airport, he had already regarded himself as a corpse. He didn't leave any last words. Even after he survived, he didn't make a sound and continued to silently dedicate himself in the 400,000,008 years. It wasn't until many years later that this dusty past was dug out from the historical materials of the invaders and made public. This unprecedented desperate battle in the history of aerial warfare finally appeared in front of the world. At this time, although the hero had passed away, his spirit would certainly be immortal. Even Chen Guang, a new era college student who was deeply impacted by foreign culture, still cried when he saw this historical material. At this time, the roar of the I-15's engine became more ear-piercing, and the speed at which it moved forward was getting faster and faster. Chen Guang quickly pushed the performance of this relatively backward fighter plane to the extreme. He stared straight ahead, his eyes becoming more and more focused. At the same time, his heart was constantly pondering the way to win. Instructor Lee's historical experience told him that he only had 2 light machine guns. It was impossible to directly destroy the enemy plane according to the conventional thinking of aerial combat. There was only one way to win, and that was to penetrate the cockpit of the enemy plane and directly kill the pilot. But this was not enough. There were a total of 7 people sitting on each 9-7 bomb, and perhaps there were backup pilots. Then each pilot of the enemy plane must be killed at least twice. This was almost an impossible task in a high-speed aerial battle. No matter how powerful a pilot was, it was impossible to accurately control the machine gun mounted on the nose of the plane while flying the plane. He also had to hit the enemy's cockpit while both sides were moving at high speed. But it did not matter. Today, Qin Guang was the strongest pilot in human history who had just been trained in the FC Little B world. He was the god of aerial combat. And he could resurrect and start over. Come on, little bastards. Enemy attack. Qin Guang pulled a full ship, changed direction and floated to the side. He was ready to cut into the enemy's formation from the side. He was like a stone thrown into the formation. In less than 10 seconds he flashed through the enemy's formation. He used the I-15's flexibility and maneuverability to the extreme, and passed through like a butterfly passing through flowers. The whole movement was done in one go and it was extremely smooth. In just a few seconds he performed at least 4 stunts that the I-15's performance could withstand. These stunts were not just to show off, but to make his position more erratic and unpredictable during close combat. At the same time he could constantly adjust his shooting angle. However, it was useless. After flying over, he only felt that his chest was empty. He looked down and saw a large pool of blood spreading out from inside. His back was also empty. It seemed that there was no support at all even if he tried to lie down. Qin Guang threw away his hands and slowly closed his eyes. How unlucky. His chest was shot through. 160 machine guns, blindly shooting at me. The firepower net was as ferocious as the nets used for fishing. There was no way to avoid it at all. After a long time, the roar of the engine reached his ears again. He was resurrected. Come on, little bastards. This time the engine was directly smashed and it crashed. Mother Faster, I'll kill you all. This time it was even worse. He was blown up before he could even get close. After dying 17 or 18 times in a row, he finally realized one thing. It was a miracle that Instructor Li was still alive. It was not that he was unlucky, but that Instructor Li must have used a god-level cheat and had a full point of luck. Not to mention entering and exiting 3 times, the probability of being hit the first time he rushed through the enemy's formation was as high as 99%. His luck was normal, but Instructor Li's was like a god's possession. This graduation exam was indeed extraordinary and should not be taken lightly. After collecting his thoughts, Qin Guang launched another attack. This time he slightly increased the speed by 3 km per hour. He had completely touched the limits of the I-15's performance. In addition, before he got close to the enemy's formation, he changed directions even more crazily and used the Dutch roll that could only be controlled on a higher-level aircraft. The plane was erratic in the air, moving like a pendulum and quickly approaching. Creaking sounds came from the fuselage, as if it was going to fall apart in the next second. However, under Qin Guang's superb control, it firmly stepped on the critical point, not even half a step away from the lightning pool. Finally he rushed through. Although he did not fire a single shot, he finally rushed through successfully for the first time. Unlike Instructor Li, this was not luck for him. It was the result of him constantly improving his own strength and constantly challenging and touching the limit. The two seemed to have the same result, but there was a fundamental difference. Instructor Li's success could not be replicated, but Qin Guang's success could be repeated again and again after he started. His first successful experience opened a whole new world for him. In actual combat with Jinji, he finally came into contact with this feeling of always standing on the critical point. It was so mysterious, as if it was not a realm that humans could see at all. Many ace pilots before him might have touched this realm from time to time, but no one could go as far and as extreme as him. After dying 373 times, he finally managed to kill an enemy pilot on his first charge. After dying 1,787 times, he had finally killed every single pilot of the enemy aircraft once. After dying 3,935 times, Qin Guang waved his hands in a nearly hysterical manner. Success. All the pilots of the enemy planes died under his precise shot that pierced through the heart. Watching the 3297 BS explode one after another on the ground, turning into beautiful fireworks, Qin Guang clenched his fists tighter and tighter. I finally succeeded. This must be the most difficult flight graduation exam in history. Congratulations, Redeemer. You have passed the graduation exam. As soon as the heavenly Holy Grail finished speaking, the sun in the distance of the black and white world became even more dazzling, even dazzling people's eyes. I-15 was still rushing forward, but it was no longer under Qin Guang's control. Instead, it flew higher and higher straight into the sky. Suddenly, I-15 slowly disintegrated in the air, turning into stars that flew in all directions. Qin Guang's spiritual body was freed from it, but he still maintained the posture of rushing toward the sun. At the same time, the entire virtual black and white world quickly gathered, turning into the most primitive energy that gathered toward the sun in the sky. The ground below gradually distorted as if being sucked in by a whirlpool. The entire black and white world became smaller and smaller, but slowly regained its color. When Qin Guang came back to his senses, he once again appeared in the world of the FC Little B. A fist-sized ball of light floated in front of him. Before he could figure out what was going on, the ball of light slammed into his head. After a long time he shook his head. There seemed to be something extra in his head. It seemed to be a feeling, but it was the feeling that was engraved in his mind during the battle just now. It was the feeling of touching the limit. The space-time tunnel behind him appeared again. The suction force came, the light and shadow reversed, and he appeared in the world within the Cloud City Cup. He was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, he lay on the ground like a zombie, sorting out the many aircraft parameters that were forced into his head when he first entered the graduation exam. It took him a few days, especially when he recalled the data of the Airbus A330, before he left the world within the cup. In a sense, his current brain was the most comprehensive book of flight piloting in the history of mankind. Unfortunately, just like how he knew how to open a refrigerator, he didn't necessarily know how to build one. He knew how to operate these airplanes, but he didn't know how to build them. Otherwise, he could at least earn a few billion just by selling the hand-drawn blueprints of the U.S. Empire's fighter jets to the old men. When he opened his eyes, the noisy man in the command center was still lecturing him endlessly. He really had to admire his voice. Qin Guang coughed twice. He thought to himself, "Brother, you can shut up now. I can be your ancestor now." Chief Qin, compared to other large civil aircraft, the A330, "Brother, that's enough. Stop it. You've said this for the third time today. I think I see land in front of me. We're almost at the shore, right? According to the map, I'm probably near the Bohai Peninsula. Quickly help me find an airport, thank you." He had confidence in his heart. Naturally, the way he spoke was different from before, full of vigor. "Chief Qin, I have bad news. Please go ahead. I suggest you fly forward for another hour before considering landing. The area in front of you is currently experiencing a thunderstorm. I understand that, but I just had a new discovery. It seems that you can't synchronize the data on your side. The right engine is almost out of fuel." Qin Guang silently looked at the unlucky symbol on the dashboard. He didn't understand the symbol before, so he didn't think much of it. Now he finally understood. This plane must have stepped on the ancestral grave of some deity before taking off. This kind of bad luck is out of this world. After all this time, we've been leaking fuel for more than half an hour. There must have been a problem with the oil pipeline when we encountered the clear sky turbulence. After flying for so long, it slowly started leaking. Damn, this plane is really crazy. Qin Guang's mind began to recall the accident list of this unlucky A330 model over the years. Suddenly, his face was full of tears. This is a bit of a disaster. Forget it. Compared to others, at least my engine hasn't exploded. The remaining fuel can still fly for about half an hour. There's still hope. Bang. Boom. There are some things that you really can't think about, especially when your melon seeds have been blessed. A violent tremor came from the right side of the plane. The plane shook violently. Qin Guang used all his strength to hold onto the chair so that he didn't fall. The chief flight attendant beside him lost his grip and flew up. His head hit the corner of the control panel and he fainted. In the passenger cabin, the person sitting near the wing had completely collapsed. The engine was smoking. "Brother, quickly give me the coordinates. The right engine exploded and is on fire. I'm going to have to land." Qin Guang took a deep breath. He was jumping up and down in the cockpit with extreme speed. One person was like 3 people. He activated the auxiliary power and the emergency pressurization device to maintain the plane's balance. At the same time, he calmly spoke into the microphone. The newly minted Ace Flying Emperor, the new and hot human god of aerial combat, was about to face the extremely bad situation of a single-engine forced landing in a thunderstorm. This wretched god was really giving him face. Chapter 726. The person in charge of the command center on the other side was also dumbfounded. "Director Qin, did you go out today without looking at the almanac? Why did everything happen?" In fact, there is a legend in the civil aviation industry that trouble often does not walk alone. Behind one trouble, there is often one trouble after another. An airplane is a big guy composed of thousands of parts. When these parts are in normal operation, civil aviation is the safest means of transportation in the world. But when flying in the sky, once a link goes wrong, it will often cause a series of chain reactions. evolving a small accident into a devastating disaster. Therefore, the security check of every airplane before takeoff is particularly important. Even if it is only a small screw problem, it will often cause irreparable consequences. A seemingly inconspicuous and subtle operation of the pilot can also put everyone in a situation of eternal damnation. Unlike driving and sailing, when an airplane flies at high altitudes, once something goes wrong, it is impossible to stop in the air for maintenance. Aviation is no small matter, the details show the real thing, this is the truth. Today, Qin Guang's plane was first hijacked. The gunfight in the cockpit and the destruction of the robbers caused many electronic equipment in the cockpit to be damaged. Then they encountered a rare clear sky turbulence at high altitudes. An engine was affected. If the crew was still alive, they might be able to repair it in time, but the crew had already been wiped out by the robbers. Qin Guang could only let it go. Before, he did not know how to repair it. Now that he has become the god of aerial combat, he also has a lot of knowledge in civil aviation. He can give it a try, but there is no time. He is the only one on the entire plane who can be relied on, and there is no one to help him. What's more, at this time when he is about to land, he encountered thunderstorms. It can only be said that the heavens are beautiful. As for the oil pipe leak and engine fire, it is said to be accidental, but in fact, it is the inevitable result of the previous clear sky turbulence and the lack of crew. Director Qin. Calm down. You must calm down. The person in charge of the Aviation Command Center shouted while desperately waving his hand to the staff around him to quickly come up with an emergency plan. On the one hand, they had to accurately locate DL199333, and on the other hand, they had to immediately come up with a route plan. Qin Guang had already finished the workload for 3 people. It was useless to be anxious now, so he sat down again. Bro, I'm not in a hurry. I'm really not in a hurry. It sounds like you're even more anxious than I am. Little Qin, be strong. The old men were eavesdropping again. Qin Guang, come back alive. As long as you can come back alive, I'm yours. All right, Jiang Yage was eavesdropping as well. Chief. Hurry up and give it a shot. Well, Xian Qin was also online. I say, everyone, can you not be so surprised? How big of a deal was that? Wasn't it just a forced landing? It's a piece of cake. Don't I still have an engine that can move? Back in the year 2001, wasn't there an A330 that glided for more than 100 kilometers without any power and landed safely with both of its engines blasted? What Qin Guang said was true. In the end, under the pilot's superb and calm operation, the plane made the longest glide flight in history and finally landed in the Azores Air Force Base. Only some of the passengers were injured, but no one was killed. It was hailed as one of the miracles in aviation history. Everyone was about to cry at his casual tone. They knew what he was talking about, but he was a top-notch pilot who had been flying for thousands of hours, while he was a newbie who hadn't even made any progress yet. How can we be compared with them? Besides, they have an entire crew to come up with ideas and rescue the plane. You're just a dabbler. How can we count on you? All right, quickly draw out the route. I can only delay for 5 minutes at most before I have to descend into the troposphere. Can we talk less nonsense and do more practical things? Okay, right away. Chief Qin, I won't let you down. Qin Guang's calmness seemed to infect the people in the command center through the microphone. The person in charge over there clenched his teeth. He thought that even a true rookie like Chief Qin was so calm. His current performance was a bit unworthy of his identity. The elders in Beijing's conference room also fell into silence. They couldn't control their emotions as they imagined how desperate Qin Guang must be. If they were in Qin Guang's shoes, they wouldn't be as calm and confident as Qin Guang if they were in Qin Guang's shoes. This young man is really formidable. Unfortunately, it seems that he really can't escape this time, right? Only one engine in a thunderstorm, and the remaining fuel can only last for half an hour. Is there a worse situation than this? Even the aviation miracle of gliding 120 kilometers in 2001 couldn't compare to his current situation. Mr. Qin, the passengers are a bit out of control now. What should we do? At this moment, the flight attendants outside shouted from the communicator under the purser who had fallen to the ground, accompanied by some violent and furious screams. After seeing the engine hanging under the wing emit smoke, and the smoke was getting bigger and bigger, the passengers in the cabin finally couldn't sit still anymore. The situation outside was a bit out of control. If it wasn't for Sun Xiaoshuan being outside, Qin Guang wouldn't have bothered with these people at all. When he opened the cabin door, he saw many excited people crowding around the first-class cabin, desperately trying to squeeze their way forward. Several Pan Am flight attendants were trying their best to maintain order, but it was to no avail. Let us in. Such a big thing happened. We have the right to know. That's right. You found a pilot and a programmer, and now you tell us that everything is under control. We don't believe it. There must be something fishy going on. Who's in charge now? Who's flying the plane now? What situation are we in? You must give us an explanation. The crowd outside was indeed a bit out of control. Even Sun Xiaoxuan was pulled out. The passengers in the first-class cabin knew that Qin Guang was the current person in charge of the plane, but because Qin Guang and the flight attendants had been very calm, at least in front of them, these people had been able to sit still. However, when the people in the economy class told them that the engine was smoking, they couldn't sit still anymore. Are you Mr. Chen's female companion? Let Mr. Chen explain to us what's going on now. Sun Xiaoxuan was still sitting in her seat, but she was surrounded by many people. Even the guys who had been chatting with Qin Guang before were now angry. All of you shut up. What are you doing? Don't you know how busy I am now? He was so busy, but these guys were still causing trouble behind his back. Qin Guang was furious. I'm in a hurry to save a life. Who has time to be your commentator? I won't stop you if you want to die, but I don't want to die yet. I can only tell you that whether the people on this plane can live or not depends on whether I can safely make a forced landing. If you want to live, you'd better sit in your seats obediently. Everyone was shocked by Qin Guang's firm and confident attitude. Use your brains and think. What can you do except believe me now? You can't do anything. So, I'll be grateful if you don't make trouble. But we're afraid. A young passenger still said with some excitement. Unexpectedly, Qin Guang rushed out, stood in front of him and punched the young man in the head. The guy didn't even have time to scream before he fell to the ground and fainted. Come on, who else is afraid? I'm very good at comforting people. I guarantee that you'll see immediate results. One punch for one person and you'll know your place in minutes. Even if the plane really crashes, I'll let you die painlessly. This trick worked. Everyone immediately became a lot more obedient. The flight attendants also took the opportunity to help persuade them. At this time, everyone should not be petty. Besides believing in him, what else could they do? But Mr. Qin, you don't know how to fly a plane. Having said that, there were still people who understood at this time. Since the flight attendants asked if there was a pilot, it meant that this guy surnamed Qin was unreliable. That's right. We can't rest assured if we put our lives in your hands. The crowd began to make noise again. Qin Guang was very calm. Well, why don't you jump now? If you don't believe me, why don't you jump? Well, no one said anything again. Jump my ass. This is a plane, not a car. You can jump whenever you want. I don't know the rules on the plane very well, but your current behavior has seriously interfered with my control of the plane. Every time you talk nonsense with me, you bring everyone one step closer to heaven. If anyone thinks he has the ability, then stand up and give me a hand. Do you? After waiting for a few seconds, the crowd remained silent. Well, no. If you don't, then shut up. Sun Xiaoxuan, come here and sit with me in the cockpit. As Qin Guang spoke, he took out the gun that he had picked up from the ground and continued, Now, I'll kill anyone who dares to cause trouble and drag everyone down with him. I'm a man of my word, and you can try if you don't believe me. After that, Qin Guang really took Sun Xiaoxuan in, and then closed the cockpit door, ignoring these idiots outside. His quite fierce reaction really subdued the crowd. Until the cockpit door was closed, no one outside dared to say a word. The flight attendant in charge of maintaining order took a deep breath and then said, Please return to your seats. The plane may have some violent turbulence, and if you leave your seat you may really be injured. If the plane really crashes, the seat belt can also increase the chance of survival for everyone. Although the situation is indeed very bad, please believe in Mr. Qin. He is our only hope. In fact, everyone knew that the flight attendant was right. They had no choice but to trust Qin Guang. On the other side, Qin Guang returned to the cockpit. Calling command, calling command. The right wing engine can no longer be repaired. It has completely lost power, and there is a possibility of a second explosion at any time. The remaining fuel can only support 28 minutes and 36 seconds. I will start to lower the altitude. Calling DL 199333. The nearest airport to you is Jiaodao Air Force Base, 73 kilometers away. There is a runway there that is enough for the A330 to land. You are about to enter a thunderstorm zone. Please take frost protection measures. At this time, the conference room in Yanjing was so silent that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. The room where Xan Qin and Wu Miaoan were in was also solemn. In a hotel far away in the United Kingdom, Jiang Yage and Jin Shuriwei were also sitting quietly. Everyone had thousands of words in their hearts, but they could not open their mouths. No one was really optimistic about Qin Guang, but at this moment, what choice did they have but to rely on him? Even if they were desperate, even if they always regretted that they had thousands of words to say to him, but they could not finish them, everyone resisted the urge to speak at this time. They did not dare to make a sound to disturb him. On the other side, Qin Guang's communication with the command center continued. The frost protection measures have already been taken. Next. So fast? The people in the command center were stunned at first. After all, in his mind, Qin Guang was just a half-baked person who sharpened his spear at the last minute. Ordinary people could not think of this frost protection measures. As the two of them were talking, the altitude of the plane had gradually decreased. Hundreds of people in the command center were solemnly waiting. Although they could not remotely control the plane, after a long period of technical research, the command center had a better grasp of the operating parameters of the plane. The more they knew, the more they could help the pilot on the plane to make decisions, and the faster the command center could come up with suggestions and tell Qin Guang on the plane what to do. It sounded simple, but the probability of success was extremely low. For a person who had never been in contact with piloting a flight, even if he had grasped some of the operating methods of the instruments and equipment through intensive study, how could he react in such an urgent situation? Moreover, he was just a dabbler. In an air crash, every step of the operation was a race against time. A delay of a few seconds would cause the plane to fall into an irrecoverable situation. First of all, the current situation of the plane was not known by the command center through normal information channels. There was a serious lag in the information, and it could not be adjusted in real time. Secondly, after Qin Guang received instructions, it was very likely that he would not be able to find the instrument. The person in charge of the command center was very worried that it would take him a few minutes to fine-tune the parameters. Every step was delayed by a few minutes. This was a catastrophic impact in a race against time landing, not to mention the situation was so bad that it was almost impossible to land successfully. Now, in the heart of the person in charge, the hundreds of experts in the command center and the things they were doing might not even be counted as doing their best and leaving it to fate. In general, it could only be regarded as a struggle that was better than nothing. Until the last moment, never give up. In the history of human aviation, about 1/3 of the air crashes were caused by extreme weather, and the remaining 2/3 were caused by things such as hijacking, equipment failure, errors in the command center, or pilot error. But there had never been a flight as unlucky as today. First, there was a hijacking, then there was a clear sky turbulence, and then one of the engines was completely destroyed. In addition, the contact between the plane and the ground command center was also left with the most basic intercom function for a long time. All other synchronized information was lost for a time, and after it was restored, it was seriously delayed. In the entire history of civil aviation, this was unprecedented. Not to mention that there would be no one in the future, but before this, there were really not many people who could be so unlucky. No, not to mention the history of civil aviation, this was unprecedented in the entire history of aviation. Chapter 727. The person in charge of the command center clenched his fists. In his heart, he imagined Director Chen's desperation and determination at this moment, and he silently shed 2 lines of tears. No matter what the result was, to dare to sit in the cockpit at this time and take over the responsibility of the deceased captain, Director Chen, you're a good man. Then he quickly discovered that something was wrong. The person in front of him didn't seem to know anything. The left wing has been impacted. Pushed down by 5 degrees. It's done. The left wing engine is frosted. Stall. Start the turbocharger. It's been started for a minute. The left wing engine has been successfully reignited. Power distribution. It's done. We've left the clouds. Lift the wings. The current wind direction is. Okay. You're now 71 kilometers away from Jiaodao Airport. Direction 270. Adjustments have been completed. We're now in a single-engine propulsion state. Can you directly tell me which direction to turn? Also, I can't maintain an altitude of 39,000 feet. I have to push down to 33,000 feet. At this time, the person in charge's face was simply filled with confusion. Strange. Where did the problem go? Why the hell is it that every time we make a decision you complete it on your side? Have you really never flown a plane before? Also, can you really handle it alone? How did Qin Guang manage to handle it? The bitterness of it was simply not worth telling others. Only Sun Xiaoxuan and the purser, who were also in the cockpit fastening themselves to their seat belts, could only watch anxiously. This guy's legs seemed to have springs installed on them. One moment he appeared in the captain's seat, his hands fiercely pressing the instruments at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he suddenly ran to the right auxiliary seat, pulled down a wrench and fiercely jabbed at the pile of buttons. In the next moment he jumped back again. He operated the instruments on both sides by himself. He was simply too busy. When his hands waved quickly, Sun Xiaoxuan could even see a mirage. At this life and death moment, seeing Qin Guang busying himself with the lives of an entire plane, yet he couldn't help at all, Sun Xiaoxuan felt both disappointed and amazed. Looking at him, it didn't seem like he was blindly pressing. Could it be that this was the legendary secret technique, repeated horizontal jumps? How strange. At such a tense moment I actually want to laugh? Sun Xiaoxuan thought that he might be crazy. When he was sitting in the first-class cabin outside, he didn't know how critical the situation was, but after he came in he saw that Qin Guang was doing the work of several people. From time to time he would jump up and down between the two drivers' seats, and from time to time he would grab the operating computer and press madly on it, crazily entering data and calculating values. How could Sun Xiaoxuan not understand how dangerous the situation was when he saw how tired and sweaty he was? Yet he didn't know tiredness or rest. But what was inconceivable was that he was not afraid at all. He had never given up, and he had never thrown caution to the wind like this. He would definitely be fine. I trust him. Command Center. This is number 333. I have successfully passed through the clouds. There is ice on the right wing engine. I have activated the auxiliary de-icing equipment and am now turning. Qin Guang said as he pulled down the manual switch. If the plane could be piloted automatically, it would be able to deal with the problem when the detector detected the ice forming. But now he could only rely on manual control. Very good. The runway of Jiaodao Airport has been prepared. It is 3,000 meters long. Please maintain a stable flight. This runway is a little short. Yes, but it should be enough. Wait, your number 1 and number 2 slits have malfunctioned. Your information is lagging by a minute. I have already eliminated the malfunction. This was all done by Qin Guang a minute ago. The Airbus A330 was the technological crystallization of modern society. It had condensed countless lessons and wisdom accumulated over 100 years of human aviation history. It had the corresponding ability to deal with many unexpected situations. At this time, the person in charge of the command center suddenly realized one thing. The situation was really a bit abnormal. The person in charge of controlling the plane was not like a newbie at all. On the contrary, he was an extremely experienced veteran pilot. He didn't seem to need the technical guidance from his side at all. Every time he made a decision, he walked ahead of the hundreds of experts on his side. Even if the information was lagging, the speed at which he made decisions was a bit too fast. Calling Flight 333. Your right wing has lost power. The steering performance is insufficient. The tail needs to be rotated by 7 degrees. It has already been rotated. Thank you. Damn, are you really a virgin? The man in charge of the aviation center wanted to give himself a slap. His balls hurt like hell. Every time I help you make a decision, you always tell me that it has already been settled. You tell me what should I do? Should I say it or not? If the other side was an experienced captain, in such a tense moment, the ground command center would indeed not waste any more words. They should let the captain controlling the plane concentrate on making decisions. The plane was flying in the air. The person who understood the situation the most and could directly control the plane was always the captain. The ground command center should and could only do that. That was to choose to believe in the captain and provide information support. After all, no one wanted to survive more than the people on the plane. But Qin Guang was not a real captain at all. Before this, he didn't even have the experience of flying a plane. This made the situation of the person in charge of the command center especially difficult. Tell me, what should I do now? Should I believe you? Can I believe you? Will everything I say help you or not? Do you need a person to think calmly and make decisions, or do you need me, the person in the ground command center, to help you from a distance? He didn't know whether it was better for him to shut up or to continue to give suggestions. At this time, they were only 64 kilometers away from Jiaodong Airport. There were less than 15 minutes before they landed. Every second was too precious. Hearing this, the old man Xan Qin, Wu Miaowan, and Jin Shiriyue, who was far away in Europe, also realized this problem. In these few minutes, Qin Guang's performance was a bit too monstrous. He didn't look like he was flying a plane for the first time. Brother, I know what you are thinking now. Yes, that's right. You only need to provide me with information support. As for decision-making, leave it all to me. You can shut up now. Chen Guang's voice came from the communication device again. Yes, at this time, it was meaningless to accept the delayed orders from the command center. Okay. The person in charge of the command center sighed helplessly. There was indeed no other choice. Right at this moment, Chen Guang suddenly made a decision. He had just sensed a slight tremor, but there was something unusual about it. Xiao Xuan, go to the passenger cabin and take a look. Stand by the window and look at the engine hanging on the wing. Pay special attention to whether there is a white misty line behind the engine. Sun Xiaoxuan quickly untied the safety belt and took him out. In fact, this matter should have been done by the purser, but at this time the purser was still in a daze. Chen Guang didn't have time to contact other flight attendants. Sun Xiaoxuan returned to the passenger cabin. The passengers here had already been comforted by the flight attendants and sat upright in their respective seats. They were tightly fastened with seat belts. From time to time, there was the sound of crying in the cabin. The atmosphere of tension, pessimism, and despair continued to spread in the cabin. Sun Xiaoxuan could even smell the emotion called despair in the air. Taking a deep breath, Sun Xiaoxuan squeezed out a faint smile on his face and then quickly walked forward with the help of the aisle. Going straight to the window next to the wing, Sun Xiaoxuan looked up. The passenger next to the wing hurriedly asked, "Are you a staff member? How on earth is the plane now?" Sun Xiaoxuan retracted his gaze and gave a slight smile. "Everything is as usual. The one piloting the plane right now is the most outstanding person in the world. He knows how to fly a plane and is very professional. Everything is under control. Please fasten your seatbelt. We will land safely." After saying that, she quickly walked to the cockpit. Unlike last time, although the atmosphere was extremely solemn, the efforts of the flight attendants made everyone calm down. Everyone knew that even if they committed suicide now, they should never disturb the staff. Sun Xiaoxuan walked very fast, almost trotting all the way back to the cockpit. Closing the door, she said very quickly, "The right engine is still smoking." Qin Guang replied, "Very good. I have turned on the automatic fire extinguisher in advance. There is only smoke. The fire has been controlled. Is there any obvious damage to the wing?" "No, but there seems to be a long white line behind the engine. It is very thin. It is leaking oil, but I have cut off the fuel supply to the right engine in advance. All right, go back to your cabin. Everyone should be quiet by now." Qin Guang was still very calm. "No, I want to stay here with you." Qin Guang coughed lightly and then roared fiercely, "I will only say this once. Go back. Don't waste my time." Sun Xiaoxuan's face froze. Of course, she knew what Qin Guang meant by this sentence. In an emergency landing, the most dangerous position was, of course, the cockpit. If the plane hit the ground head first, the people sitting in the passenger cabin had a chance to survive, but the people in the cockpit had absolutely no chance to survive. He let her go at this time because he was trying his best to ensure his survival. He was ready to die. In fact, Sun Xiaoxuan guessed right. Although Qin Guang was already the best pilot in history, when the plane was flying in the air, you never knew what would happen in the next moment. Who could say that the pilots who died in the air crash were not excellent? Struggling to survive in the face of disaster and snatching life from the hands of death, in addition to ability, luck was also indispensable. Unfortunately, so far, everyone on the plane was extremely unlucky. Obviously, the goddess of luck was on the other side of the earth today. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.